OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, you're very welcome along. It's Wednesday morning. This is one of those weeks where it feels like decades worth of news is happening. Obviously, the replay was ordered yesterday. We have a player at Atletico Madrid. Evan Ferguson's ankle might be okay. So, life is good. We have plenty to talk about. If you want to get involved, we'd love to hear from you. @OffTheBall AM on Twitter. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream if you're subscribed to our YouTube feeds. And as well as that, you can always get us 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number. Shane is here. Shane, how are you?
Good morning. How are things?
Good. You've been in contact with our Colombian correspondent?
Yeah, Colombian, I was going to say Colombian cartel correspondent, but not quite. Owen Sheehan, yeah, he was in a nightclub last night.
Bogota.
Bogota.
What's the nightlife like in Bogota?
I would imagine there's a lot of reggaeton music.
Is it better than the one in Medellin?
Medellin, yes, he's getting around. But yeah, I bumped into a mutual friend, or a guy I knew from college, so messaged me this morning, and then very passive-aggressively at 6 this morning said, have a good show, as he sits in a nightclub.
Spending a lot of time in Colombia, isn't he? This was meant to be a whistle-stop tour of South America, and he's gone about 6 months and he still hasn't left Colombia. I don't know what the attraction is.
He has been to other places, I'm pretty sure. He's been in Mexico, hasn't he? And
yeah. Look, we're just jealous. We're trying to live vicariously here. So keep the messages coming.
I don't want to be seeing this.
Keep the late night messages coming, and the correction of the pronunciations. We should have brought that to air. I wasted a good opportunity for some top quality content there.
Yeah, fair. The correct pronunciation of Medellin.
Yeah.
Well, Tommy's was Medellin.
Get it right.
Medellin, okay. Yeah, it's not Medellin.
It's not
Tommy
Medellin.
Rooney says.
That was middle. Right, it is 7:32 this morning. Who were the big winners and losers from the transfer from the window? It feels a lot like it was. It's hard to call Chelsea a winner, is it? Like, have they bankrupted the team for a generation to come, or have they got together the greatest collection of footballers we've ever seen? Because turning this into a team is going to be very difficult.
Yeah, I was sitting down last night trying to figure out what is the Chelsea starting 11 going to look like at the end of this. So in 2 months' time, when Graham Potter's had them on the training pitch,
They still have a crap goalkeeper.
well, they have 2 goalkeepers that maybe they're not quite sure of, and they spend 50 million or more on both of them. And you look through that squad, and that's a consistent pattern everywhere. And you look at, it's a British transfer record, Enzo Fernandez. He's the most expensive player in the history of British football. At 10 million Benfica paid from last summer.
Here.
Last summer.
They're cute, aren't they?
He scored 1 goal for them. I know it's not his role to score goals.
Yeah.
But he's played half a season and he's gone from 10 million to 121 million.
And Dan McDonald's pointing out in his piece today about Matt Doherty that Nottingham Forest in the summer spent more than all of the other major leagues combined. Like that one club, and the same was true of all of the clubs in the Premier League apart from 2. So if you're the top of the pile at the most inflationary moment in the history of the game, that's a lot of money.
It's remarkable that it is the most inflationary moment in the history of the game, considering, like lots of things in life, we thought post-COVID it would be a very different world and football would have to approach things differently and they'd be far more sensible in their spending. With the Manchester United and Liverpool sale ongoing, it is interesting that American owners have come in and made this level of investment. They clearly feel that there's a lot more to go in terms of revenue
and valuation
for the Premier League. Now, whether the Premier League and English football fans will like the way they want to go about bringing in that revenue, and whether they're happy to just stay with the current television deals and the current model of playing all your games at home, 19 games at home, 19 games away, I think all those things will be coming back on the table.
You mean an extra game in America, that kind of stuff?
As you see in the NFL, now there'll be absolute outrage and we might be several years, but I think Todd Bowley, clearly isn't just spending this money. Like, this is a team who've spent, as we say, an insane. You even look at since last summer, they've spent over 50 million on 5 different players, and they brought in the 3rd most expensive player of all time on loan. On top of that, in João Felix, 120 million for Enzo Fernandez, 80 million for Wesley Fofana, who's been injured the entire time since he came from Leicester. Mikhailo Mudryk, 70 million. Marc Cucurella, 65 million. Wouldn't be surprised if he was gone again during the summer. Raheem Sterling, 56 million. All in euros. But that's ridiculous level of spending
over a long period of time
for a team that's
8-year
highly
contracts,
seems highly unlikely to finish inside the top 4. Maybe not even inside the top 6.
They're winners in the transfer. They are winners.
Are they?
100%.
Is this a good thing for
Money
them?
doesn't matter. They have the money.
The money doesn't matter unless it totally destabilises your squad, and the players who have been there for several years, of which there's very few, are looking around going, what? And there's nothing in Chelsea's history to suggest that this always works. If you look through the most expensive transfers of all time and where Chelsea fit into it and the players they've bought, how many of them have been a success? Romelu Lukaku.
Well, currently on loan.
Currently gone on loan. So you'd imagine they're probably paying a good chunk of his money. Kai Havertz. Solid squad player.
And look,
at this stage.
did win a Champions League for them.
Did.
So
There is that.
And maybe that
they're
one
winners,
moment
lads.
will.
This money doesn't matter. I was looking at the figures last night. People even on Sky were saying, they could have bought West Ham for nearly as much as they spent in January. They don't. The fans don't care. Todd Bodie doesn't care. So why should we care? They bought some
because
top.
it all comes back to ticket prices eventually.
I know,
will be a
yeah.
knock-on effect for the fans.
Well, notwithstanding that, right, because I'm not a Chelsea ticket buyer, right, but from a team-building perspective, has there been examples of this methodology working in the past, where you go out like a drunk kid in a sweet shop and go, "Ah," and then you end up like the kids in South Park having taken the cough medicine? Absolutely crazy.
Forest has worked. They're more than going to avoid relegation if they keep pushing. And
it's working. Like Forest sums up the insanity of it. When I know you talk about
if Forest had worked, they would be
Keylor Navas
sixth.
now plays for Nottingham Forest.
Yeah,
Keylor Navas plays for Nottingham Forest.
I mean, this has happened before when Queen's Park Rangers went out and signed the 5 Champions League winners and probably got relegated. Remember they had like more Champions League winners playing for QPR than anybody else. Was that the Flavio Briatore era?
Yeah, that was. We should get Richard Dunn on some
Julio
days to
Cesar
talk
was the
about
keeper.
Talk about the great days. Rio Ferdinand,
Singwa.
centre back.
Oh yeah.
Sean Wright Phillips, all of them on about 150 grand a week.
I mean, nice work if you can get it.
It's a short-term thing, isn't it? It doesn't work for long.
Well,
but with Chelsea, they have a seemingly bottomless pit of money.
But remember, they also wanted to sign Caicedo from Brighton and couldn't get him. Like, that wasn't, we brought somebody else in because of him. They were willing to spend another 70 million to bring another centre midfield or into the team and couldn't get away with it.
I think Bowley's just getting involved. Like, they were involved in the Sabitzer thing for an hour or two yesterday as well. They were like, if Enzo doesn't happen, Marcel Sabitzer could be going to Chelsea instead of United. They just seem to want every player that their rivals want to sign. They just get involved.
Well,
I don't know if it's Todd Bowley thing or if it's
that
Graham
was the
Potter
tweet,
thing.
wasn't it, about Todd Bowley trying to hijack the Jorginho deal? It was like, what? Hey, I see what you did there.
Yeah, of course.
So Matt Doherty's gone to Atletico Madrid.
Great.
Out of nowhere. It was like, we'll have to go and do a show from Madrid. We'll just have to. It was like, we've never had a player have we had a player at Atletico Madrid before? I don't think so.
No.
No.
Have you ever had a player at Real Madrid?
No, never had a
Well,
player
this is
at
the start.
Barcelona.
We're getting on the list.
So it's the first Irish player at one of the big teams in Spain. It's a pretty seismic moment. I know we had, Ian Hart was at Levante. That was the famous one.
Sporting
Towards the end of
Gijón.
his career.
Kevin Moran.
Moran, yeah.
Yeah, Kevin Moran. And was there somebody else? Somebody
Patrick
I didn't.
O'Connell managed Barcelona.
That's
back in the
true.
day.
This is true. Yeah,
Finnan.
of course. Steve Finnan. That was the one I was thinking.
Again, went towards the latter stage of his career. There have been Irish success stories, like Michael Robinson was a unbelievable success story back in the 80s, and John Aldridge did very well.
He did for that one season.
When he went to Real Sociedad. So, there's an excitement and then there's a reality to what Matt Doherty is walking into and how much game time he will get. So, Nahul Molina, who famously scored the winning goal in the World Cup final, is currently playing at right back for Atletico Madrid. They're 4th in the league. They're not going to win the title. They were dumped out of Europe, completely dumped out of Europe.
Yeah.
So there's not going to be too many European games. So is Doherty going to get himself a game? He's obviously working with George Mendes, and there's a strong connection there with Atletico Madrid, and this is the way of the modern transfer market that your agent quite often dictates where you end up, and it does seem for Matt Doherty it ends up quite nicely. I think he was quite friendly with Gareth Bale, so maybe he just takes Gareth's spot at the golf club in Madrid and takes his apartment and stays there for 6 months.
Nice.
I don't know if this is a long-term deal in terms of will there be an extension if it goes well. Tottenham have, there's so many parts of this transfer market when you look at it late last night. They have to cancel his contract because they've so many players already out on loan. They're not allowed to have another one.
it's brilliant for Matt Doherty that they've cancelled his contract and that he's on a short-term
Yeah.
deal because he is then free to take all the money in the summer from whoever he wants. It's a brilliant moment for him. So they probably had to pay him off to cancel his contract. I have 18 months left here. I'm not going anywhere. No, you have to go. No, I'm not going anywhere. No, you have to go. No, I'm not going anywhere. Okay, here's £1 million or £2 million.
But again,
or whatever.
Quite possibly, but when
Happy days, Matt Doherty.
his agency is involved.
So maybe Mendes seals. No,
And somebody else comes to Tottenham in 6 months' time, and
but the player has to get.
doesn't. Here, I think it's a good adventure, and if he gets some
immortal
game
words
time,
Have you seen the Atletico description of Matt Doherty's style of play?
Henry Hill.
This is this is quite good. So Atletico Madrid statement: a corpulent 31-year-old right-footed winger. Does anyone know what corpulent means?
Fat.
I mean, what a way to describe your new signing.
No, that's not good.
I lost the translation. With the capacity to also occupy the interior demarcation, he is safe from high and holds the position well in defence. And once he regains possession of the ball, his good long passes facilitates the creation of plays of attack. So he's fat, but he can play well.
He ain't fat. He's
not
like
fat
an
at all, though.
incredible athlete.
Yeah,
Like
so I don't know where. There's a lot lost in translation there somewhere.
again, I know there's an excitement. There is a very strong possibility that if we look at it from an Ireland point of view, he would have played far more for Tottenham over the next 6 months.
Molina's been crap apparently for Atletico. They've had to play Marcos Llorente at right back for quite some parts of the season, and I think they prefer him. Let's play
the video. This is from the Atletico Twitter account. 6 seconds.
Hi Atleticos, very happy to be here. Can't wait to get training and hopefully see you at the game Saturday.
There you go.
Can't wait to hear him speak in Spanish.
That's just great. It just brings a smile to your face.
That's bad. It's great. I'm delighted for him. It's like Robbie at Inter. That didn't really work out, but you know.
Yeah, and a bit of shithousery in the last few minutes against France as Ireland lead 1-0.
This is the only reason everyone's excited about Atletico. Yeah. It's that like they're playing Real Madrid in a couple of weeks' time.
Magic.
What we want is a giant scrap. Even if he's a sub, he's in the middle of it.
Yeah,
he's getting in Benzema's face.
Yeah. Well, Benzema's retired, isn't he?
Well.
We should talk about the other big news that a replay has been ordered by the CCCC in the Crokes Glen game. Crokes made it clear from the start that they weren't interested. They were going to send the cup up, and you're like, really? Is that not being a bit of a baby in the whole thing? It's like, no, we're not going to play. We're not going to abide by the rules. Well, the rules don't matter for us. They didn't matter in the 16th man. It's like, okay, grand. And now it's like, well, you can't. The result can't stand because you had 16 men on the field of play.
Yeah.
I keep seeing people say this doesn't matter. It's like, if it doesn't matter, why do you have the rule in the first place?
No, I don't understand that. They wouldn't have scored anyways. We'll never know.
How do you know? Sorry, hang on a second. If you know they weren't going to score, what's the winner in the 3 o'clock Kempton today? Because you can tell the future there, buddy. What's going to win?
Look, this is a complete shambles and has been from the first moment. The ruling following the meeting of the CCCC clearly says that Kilmacud Crokes are at fault for this. That is their ruling. Now, and they've imposed the penalty of a replay of the game. Crokes can appeal, and then they can go all the way to the DRA, and there's every possibility that they'll go and do that.
Or Glen could go to the DRA.
Quite.
If Crokes win this next appeal.
You know, Declan Bogue was interesting last night. Does anybody believe this game is going to be replayed now? Like Shane Walsh, I think, is in Australia. There's players back with their county teams. There's players out injured who've had operations. Like, life has moved on very quickly. Yeah, the only way this was going to be replayed is if the GAA came out last Monday morning and said, here, there's an issue, we're going to investigate this quickly, we're going to talk to the two teams, we're going to figure this out. 10 days on, it's going to run for another 10 days. Like, this is an All-Ireland final. We have changed the entire fabric of the GAA season to put a greater focus on the club. It's the All-Ireland final, and we're just not going to have a winner. Just not going to ever have a proper decision on this. Like, that's where this is heading right now, that Kilmacud refused to play the game.
Why would they refuse to play the game? On what basis are they refusing to play the game? On what moral...
winners in their own heads.
On what moral basis, when you have an extra man on the field of play at the end of the game and you're defending, are you saying you didn't get an unfair advantage? Are you saying you didn't benefit from that? And if you're saying you didn't benefit from that, well then, okay, fine. But then that speaks about what you believe in, like, is actually fair play.
No, and from the first night, it was clear that the way, and I can't speak on behalf of Kilmacud and don't want to speak on behalf of Kilmacud, that they were looking at this as a mistake was made. We made a substitution. The referee started the game too quickly before our player had an opportunity to come off. The referee made a mistake. The referee makes lots of mistakes. And this is what happens in the game.
That's not correct.
So we're the All-Ireland champions. We don't know if that's not correct.
But we do know it's not correct because they had 16 men on the field of play. There was no...
Absolutely. There's a responsibility on the team.
And that's it. And once they failed...
But there's also a responsibility on the officials.
It's both. It is both.
And the fact that the GAA have just stayed silent and not in any way said, geez, there was a screw-up here. So we're going to have to work with the two teams.
Apparently in their correspondence to them yesterday, now I've only seen this reported, I haven't seen the correspondence, that there was an acknowledgement that there was an error on the part of the officials on the field, right? That's the first time they've said that now. Again, I have to say, I think if everybody come out straight away, if the GA come out straight away and said there's a mistake, we're going to investigate, and if Crokes come out and said, yeah, we made an honest mistake, then Glenn immediately would have gone, fair enough, field of play, but we accept your apology and we move on. But they didn't do that. Everybody, I would say, apart from Glenn, have chronically mishandled this to the point where we're now seeing, we're going to send the cup up the road to you. It's like, I think that's shocking.
Do you think there's a universe in which Kilmacud now agree, just right, feck it, let's play the replay? Just get it done whenever you want to do it. March, Paddy's Day, it doesn't matter.
There's been no suggestion that that's going to happen. How they make that happen with the disruption it would cause on so many people's lives to play the game again. The fact that it's ran on 10 days, we won't know.
Give them 6 weeks notice, right? Paddy's weekend, away we go on Paddy's Day, and you've got 6 weeks. Your man can come back from Australia. People will have recovered from injury. Mannion will be much better by that stage. He'll have loads of training in. Like, I mean,
what did Glass and Doherty do? Like, when did they leave the Derry panel to go back into training with
the week before? You know,
exactly. Like, look at the impact on Derry. Like, Derry are fighting for a place in the Sam Maguire competition.
Yeah.
If you were to lose two of their best players
for a week for 2 games,
but is it?
Look, it's not ideal.
Is it just for 2 games?
It's not ideal. No one's saying it's ideal, but it's like. Again, no one stepped in.
It's an All-Ireland final. I get that the GA's line seems to be, well, if we step in here, we'll be stepping in everywhere. It's the All-Ireland final. We're going to end up in a scenario where literally there's not even an asterisk. There's just a didn't happen.
This isn't a refereeing error on its own. This is 16 against 15. So anytime there's 16 against 15 and it's proven, step in, right? The rule is you can't have 16 on, and the next time this happens, there's no hearing about it. It's automatic disqualification. You're gone. If you have 16 men on, it's up to you not to have 16 men on. And then all of a sudden, people take the responsibility to only have 15
men on. So, like, where do you draw the line on that? Kilmacud had 17 men on. Paul Mannion was still on the pitch.
Well,
that happens in every single game.
But when a player is directly affected.
But that's what I mean. So this all comes because of the GA's attitude in general to rules like this, which is, no, we couldn't stop play. Imagine how long a game would go on if we had to stop play for substitutions.
And so again,
every other sport manages,
like in soccer,
do it.
The other solution to all of this is add on loads of extra time at the end. So we have an automatic 7-8 minutes, and everybody just gets used to 7-8 minutes, and the drama increases. Like, it just adds to the entertainment factor in the drama.
Glenn have done nothing wrong here, and the last thing I'm sure they want is, as you said, the trophy being sent up in a taxi up the road, and you're the All-Ireland champions and your name is going to be inscribed in it. They're like, they don't want that.
No, but that's like, so this is the bit where it's now become like look, we're playing poker here, lads. And you're like, no, you're not playing poker. You're not. What's the spirit of the game? The spirit of the game is we're going to play by the rules and be the best team in the country. And you've got an opportunity to do that in one last game. Show up, play the game, stop whining about being victimised or any of the stuff that's coming out. Just play the game. You're in an All-Ireland final. You screwed up. You were involved in a massive screw up in the last minute that has prevented the original result from standing. And so play the game.
Well, much like the GA, the fact that Crokes haven't said anything doesn't help them. I think there is something in Crokes coming out and saying, listen, he shouldn't have been on the pitch. Even that. But we wanted to get him off. We tried to get him off. We have video footage here showing that we were trying to get him off. The referee let them take the free quickly. He should have stopped play.
Except the footage of them trying to get him off is like he's standing on the goal line. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no effort to come off, whether he knew or not.
Well, he's 60 or 70 yards away.
Well, but Mannion was 60 or 70 yards away.
In the chaos of the final seconds of an All-Ireland final.
So that's the case you would have made as opposed... and that's what if you come out immediately after the game and said, we were trying to get him off, it didn't happen, really sorry, then at that point, you're like... But instead what's happened has been like... send the cup up the road. We're not playing that again. We're the champions.
Philly McMahon's comments in the paper at the weekend. Someone in the comments has pointed it out. He was Can I say to be embarrassed as a Glen player for appealing?
I didn't see them, but like, with respect, Philly hasn't been involved in the game, right? And James O'Donoghue was saying, you know, he was asked by Paddy on the podcast, what would you do? And he's like, well, it's easy for me to sit here objectively and say, well, you know, but I haven't spent my entire time.
Yeah.
And they don't know the sense of injustice. They don't know how close they feel. Like, I saw somebody else on Twitter saying, you frequently practice against an extra man in the defence because it puts stress on you and it makes it harder, so that when you come up in a match, you feel like there's loads of space. So having an extra man in the field of play is hugely beneficial.
Distinct advantage, yeah.
For however long it happens. So, like, if my team had lost an All-Ireland final because the opposition had an extra man than they were allowed to, which is not in the rules, I wouldn't feel pretty good about it. And I wouldn't feel very good about my team not going to the ends and saying, no, we back you. We're going to give you the opportunity in a fair fight to see what happens. And Kilmacud should be like, okay, fair enough, that's a screw up, and we've been ordered to play the replay, and because it's an All-Ireland final, we're going to do it. I don't understand this. Oh, we won it, it's over, we won it in the field. It's like, what's wrong with playing the game again?
I almost feel like people in Kilmacud would have felt wronged by the sense of coverage around the Shane Walsh transfer at the outset. So even before any of this happened, they had a
bunker
siege mentality. Well, I think they had a siege mentality before any of this happened. So this on top of it has almost added so much fuel to the fire. And now they feel like, well, everybody hates us anyway. They might as well hate us.
Everybody doesn't hate them.
Like, no, that's the point. That's my yeah, exactly. Like, it's in their heads in many ways. Like, nobody hates Kilmacud. If this was the other way around, we'd be calling for Glen to accede to a replay.
You can't have a competition be decided when one team has outside the regulation number of players. Imagine, like in basketball, you send on a 6th man for the last play. Yeah. Imagine at the end of the Six Nations, we're defending feverishly against France, and we're like, go on, 16 man, they won't notice. Or whatever.
Well, that's also not
they won't notice, but
that's not
we
an opinion
accidentally had a 16 man.
Like, what you're saying there is no longer an opinion. That is the ruling of the GEA.
Is that there's 16 men on the field of play and you can't have that?
And that the game has to be replayed. So it does change the context. Now, what will happen if Crokes don't play? There's talk of a fine. There's, you know, could they be suspended as a club if they were to refuse to play the game?
And so why are you walking yourself into those scenarios? Why don't you just gather everybody and say, this is a shit situation. We own a share of it, whether or not that's 20% or 80%. Whatever share of it we own, this is the shit situation, but let's fix it and let's go out and smash them. We're the best team in the country. We've been the best team in the country for the last 2 years. Let's go and smash them. Why is nobody saying that instead of like, oh, no, we did our drinking, we celebrated. You can't ask a lad to celebrate and then tell him he was celebrating on the wrong. You can't. Spiritually, it's you know. We won it in the field of play, game was over.
Look, I do still think that this wasn't me loud in that there wasn't this sense of outrage when the game finished and when they were leaving and when they were celebrating that night. Word was only starting to get around as to what had actually happened.
Okay, but on mature reflection, it turns out those celebrations were unwarranted.
Shane Walsh is gone. So Shane, like, they are amateur players.
Yeah.
Like, he's one of 30 in that squad, many of whom have probably gone off travelling the world, who have plans for the rest of their life to kick on, and we're going, tough lads, back you come.
Well, I think so, yeah, because it's not.
But this is where I think the GEA, if they'd acted quickly, and on Monday morning it got in, Shane Walsh is going, you know what, maybe I'll just hang around for a little while and see what's going to happen
buy
here.
Some insurance for my travel. Can I just make the point though that, like, we are where we are, in the infamous words of like.
Well, I think we are where we are is going to, and that's maybe the Crokes thing now, is we are where we are, and our players are gone, and we have won the trophy, and on we go.
Yeah, but you had 16 men in the field to play, so you don't deserve to keep the trophy.
Well, that's the ruling of the GEA since last night.
Yeah, and it should have been the ruling straight away. And here's the thing:
does the ruling now rule out a compromise? Because I did think that maybe when they got together, there might be a Croke say, "We're not playing the game," and Glen say, "We're not taking the trophy."
So what happens then?
Well, then I think you're in a limbo where there will be no official winner. Crokes can have their satisfaction of
Richie had a great idea.
The trophy and they celebrated it.
Richie had a great idea last night. Cairns O'Reilly's versus whoever Kilmacud beat. Oh, so whoever Glen beat in the semi. You guys go on, you go on and play. And they're like, yeah, okay, no problems.
Boy Cullen, yeah. Ah, yeah. Why not? Or Glen versus Cairns if Kilmacud are the ones who decide.
Could we go the whole way back and Ty got beaten?
Fossa to play in it.
Ty got beaten in the Kildare final, so technically, you know, like King Ralph, the whole situation. Hey, we're all our club champions.
Yeah. It's going to be tainted either way, isn't it, at this stage?
Right, it is 7:54 this morning. You can give us your views on this, and you have been doing so far. Here's what's coming up on the show. We've got Keith Wood and Tom Shanklin going to preview Wales against Ireland. We have Tommy Walsh coming a little bit later on to talk about the return of the Hurling League. Gilly Flaherty's going to look at the transfers from the WSL. We have Deal or No Deal with Phil Egan assessing the transfer window as well. But I don't know. I think that everybody has put themselves in it. This is a little bit like the Banshees of Inisherin, where people are chiseling their own fingers off. Just play the game.
It was effective though, the chiseling off the fingers.
It wasn't.
Well,
your man kept coming. He kept coming, and he couldn't play the fiddle anymore.
Yeah, true.
Why would you not play the game?
It's fairly graphic, wasn't it? That's an interesting way to put it.
Oh, I have, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I'm just starting to wonder what happened to them at the end. Then what happens after the credits stop rolling?
The friendship,
I don't know.
dissipates.
Well, does he die of gangrene or something?
Well, probably back in those days they had to sear it shut with the fire, the embers of the fire. There you go. Which one's Colin Farrell has to be the dub, right? Oh, they're both dubs.
They are both dubs, yeah.
Oh, but he's a north sider though, so he can be Glenn.
Bit of a split there, yeah, because he's closer to the.
I think Brendan Gleeson is a bit more of a Dubs GA man than Colin Farrell, though.
You'd expect so.
It's an interesting anecdote. Banshees of Inisherin versus Glenn Kilmacud. At least it's over, lads. That's not over, but
it's nowhere near over.
It's Kilmacud's decision now, isn't it?
This is the GAA's version of Saipan, right? Where in 40 years' time, people are going to be talking about this, going, "I can't believe that happened."
But
and we're living in the middle of it. John Fogarty has a line about the CCCC, or somebody had a line about the CCCC, feeling like they were kind of left a little bit isolated and a lack of leadership from the GA. And as far as I know, the leadership appoints the CCCC. So if that's coming from them, it's like, lads, what are you doing?
The point was made on the show last night that if Port Duffy had still been the Director General of the GA, this would have been solved on the day.
It's a great point by Declan Bogue. I do wonder though, because it's very difficult.
Of course,
he's come to be the greatest GA administrator of all time. But there was lots of stuff that Port Duffy tried to do that he couldn't get through because
But Tom Ryan, this isn't out of kilter with the approach that they've taken since he went into the job. It's that he keeps a very
hands-off approach,
low profile to things. They've obviously decided that it's not for the president to come out and speak about this. I do wonder if part of this is the fact that we are putting such a focus on certain parts of the season on the club game, and the club game isn't ready for it. The club game is properly amateur. It's very local. It's very personal. So you can be critical of the Dubs, and it's a greater thing. You can be critical of whereas we had the same thing the week before with the Fossa game and Stewartstown, and you're going Stewartstown, this is junior football. And now they're live on TV, elbowing Paudie Clifford in the face. That's the sort of thing that for junior football is grand out on a Sunday when nobody can see it. But now we've given it this platform that, do you criticise that player to the extent you criticise an inter-county player when he's just rocking up on a Tuesday night for a bit of training and he didn't ask to be put in this position?
Well, JD made that point too. But I think that the elbow to the face is a fairly universal. It's like we can all quail in the face of that and go, I wouldn't like that. I don't think that's not kosher.
What's the point of the role of GA president then? Is it a symbolic role like the Irish president?
Listen, you stand up, you say the name of the captain, and you move on.
And you appoint the committees. So you're supposed to have you're supposed to you run on you run for election on the basis that you're going to be the figurehead that leads the organisation.
Is that it? Just figurehead then?
Over the next couple of years.
Could he not have stepped in?
Well,
Barry McCarthy.
I'm sure there's a power behind the scenes that maybe you don't publicly, or if you decide actually there is something here for the integrity of the game that you should publicly come out. But they are in a bit of a limbo in that they don't want the president speaking publicly on behalf of the association. And
I'd love to hear from Kilmacud. Obviously, maybe they won't talk to us anymore, but I'd love to hear from them about why they think not playing the game is the right thing to do now, and sending the cup up. It just seems wrong. It seems like it's the wrong thing to do. That whole, we can't play, we won, it's over. They had their chance. They didn't have their chance because you had 16 men on the field to play. So once you start accepting the truth here, that you have some responsibility for this, then you start to be able to fix the situation. And surely somebody in the club is going, why don't we just play the game? Let's play the game. And if they lose, they lose, but we'll have the biggest chip on our shoulders for all time. We'll go on we'll win 3 out of the next 4. Like, they're not going away. They're definitely not going away. But if they get into this situation where they send the cup up the road and they get fined, and it's like, what is the point of that? It's just a waste of time and money.
Every time we say this, send this cup up the road thing, I just have this image of the cup in the back of the taxi and the Gardaí giving a bit of a cortege all the way up.
I can get behind that, like a ceremonial.
Yeah. PSNI
The
take
entire
over.
club out.
Auckland
Off you
crosses the
go.
border. Yeah.
Maybe that's PSNI. 8 o'clock this morning. Shane, good stuff. Nate, sorry, you're staying. Are you staying?
I might as well stay.
I'm gone.
All right. Nathan, good stuff. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. After the break, Keith Wood and Tom Shanklin are previewing Wales against Ireland. We're going to hear from Tommy, Paddy and James. Just a week late, lads. Just a week late. The biggest football pod in the country finally have their say on the farrago that is Glen versus Kilmacud.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Red 78.
It's going to be a bit of a lottery from the scrum point of view. They are incredibly strong.
Nobody knows Munster rugby better.
Look, the stats sometimes can be skewed. You can have lower possession than the opposition and still win the game.
I can't believe you've been positive for 3 weeks in a row. It must have been something
I know,
that's
I
so
can't
out of your
believe it
mindset.
Available every Wednesday. Don't miss a moment of action. Subscribe to the rugby channel on the OTB Sports app and turn on your notifications now.
If the GA order a replay, Kilmacud Crokes have made their stance pretty clear. They are not going to play this game again. So I can see this rumbling on. There's probably not even a window for it to be played now that the inter-county season has started. And probably the GA were hoping for that, that the inter-county season would kick off and everyone would kind of just forget about this. But even if a replay is ordered, I think it's going all the way to the DRA as well. But the way it's been handled, the positions both clubs have been put in, the narrative around this as well, I had a big issue with this. I thought it was completely over the top, some of the commentary around Kilmacud Crokes. I am not a Kilmacud Crokes fan. I have played against them for 20 odd years in my career here in Dublin. I've usually been beaten by them most of the time as well. But I thought some of the commentary around Kilmacud as a club was way off the mark. And it really pissed me off, and I'm sure it pissed off a lot of Dublin club people, but definitely Kilmacud Crokes people. They're a massive club. They're a really successful club. They're an unbelievably well-run club. And I think if this wasn't a Kilmacud Crokes involved, I don't think the coverage that this has gotten over the last week will be anywhere near as sensational. I think if the shoe was on the other foot, I don't think it would have been as sensational, the coverage. And I think, in a way, that's led to Crokes being so adamant about how they feel they've been treated, that they're actually not going to play this game again. So
you can't spin this either as if Kilmacud are the victim of it, and they're being shamed in the media. Like, let's not go that far either. I mean, they got a little bit of abuse in the media, like, but nothing crazy. Like, you know, they got hammered in a couple of places, but they're still kind of being almost patted on the back now because, you've got an awful doing. At the end of the day, it's just embarrassing for the GA. I would even take the clubs out of it. I'd take Kilmacud out and I'd take Glen out and I'd say, this is a GA issue. Like, you can't just replay games over, like you said, an administrative error. I think that every game then is going to be question marks on it. And we've gone way too far with social media and with technology to let that happen in probably one of the most important stages of the season. Not even in these players' careers, like, that's in their whole lives. It's a massive moment. For 2 minutes to go in All Ireland final, to become so loose and just let an extra fella on the field. Did it affect the result? Probably not. But it's still too loose to happen, especially in a final. And it's just embarrassing for everyone involved in GA. It's just embarrassing.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Get on the football pod. That goodness is brought to you in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the football, hurling and camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Check out the hashtag the toughest for more. Now, let's turn our attention to the Six Nations. Warren Gatland against Ireland. This is very exciting, and I'm delighted to say, to help preview the game, two legends, Keith Wood and Tom Shanklin. Keith, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, Ger. How are you?
I'm very good. Tom, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much.
Around about this time every year, we would taunt Wales about how, you're no good. But actually this year, I'm terrified of doing it because Warren Gatland's picked a team that's really strong, loads of experience. just a nice little sprinkling, a soupçon of youth. And, it's suddenly the ghosts of Welsh beatings handed out to us over the last decade or so randomly is starting to haunt us a bit. Are you feeling confident?
I wish I felt as confident as you. I can't believe you taunt us that badly. But more confident than I was last year, because Warren Gatland is back and he's got the ability to be able to get the best out of players. I think that's why he's so good. That's his USP, is the ability to get the players to overperform. So slightly more confident than I was last year, but we're still going through a period where we're relying on a lot of old players. There's 8 of the 23 which played in the 2012 Six Nations. So we still have a big reliance on a lot of the older guys. You know, you're talking mid-30 players, age group. So Ireland coming number 1 team in the world, slightly daunting, because we know how good Ireland are at the moment until you guys reach a World Cup.
Yeah.
But the pressure is off us, which is good. The pressure is off us, which is good. We got a new 12 in Joe Hawkins, so it'll allow Wales hopefully to play a little bit wider. But I am nervous. I won't lie to you.
Keith, were you rolling your eyes there at the pressure's off us, or was that just a...
Yeah, a little bit. I love, I love and hate the sort of pre-match chat that happens with coaches, and Shanks, in fairness to him, is well able to sucker us into a false sense of security. But look, it's funny. I just think it looks like history repeating itself in many respects. And if I went back to disturbingly 23 years ago, when Gatland, after the World Cup in Lens, he stuck with the old stagers, pretty much all the old team, for the first game against England, and we got hockeyed. And then there was a huge raft of changes came in immediately after against Scotland, and that seemed to be the change that happened, that the young blood got the opportunity. So I think in many respects he's gone back to what he knows. He's gone back to a group of guys he trusts and who trust him. I will agree with Tom that he knows how to get the best out of Wales, and the players are very confident with the style that he wants to play. It does look like a too old team for the first match of a year going into a World Cup, and whether a lot of those guys will be there. But he also has an idea that people have to fight for the jersey, so they're not giving it up too easily. I would go into this not with nerves, but with a level of excitement in that Ireland are number 1 in the World Cup. We've consistently reacted poorly to that title. We just have to go out and prove that we can play better than Wales can. And I don't know how much of an influence he can have. He will get them playing focused, but I have to believe that Ireland have to have that confidence to back up their placing, to back up the skills that they have and the players that they have. And we're pretty much injury-free for the most part. I think it'll be a very tough game. We've lost there consistently over the last, 6 or 8 years. So, for me, it would be enough of a grudge match to make certain that Ireland bring their top game.
Tom, we did a good deep dive with the statistics yesterday with a rugby analyst who was basically pointing out that Wales have been so far off it over the last year or so that actually, to improve, all they really have to do to make a significant improvement would be to do the basics right. And that's one of the things that Gatland always gets right, is everybody knows exactly what their job is. Everybody fulfills the functions within that role. And if you don't, you come out of the team. But the certainty around what Gatland will give the team and trying to do, I guess that's one of the reasons why he's gone back to the old stagers.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. He's a massive focus on set piece. And I think that's why he's picked 6 Ospreys in the pack against Ireland at the weekend. We saw what the Ospreys did to Montpellier home and away. We saw how good their scrum was against Leinster recently. And his game is based a lot around set piece. So you get a good scrum, then you've got the ability to attack off that. And as I said, we've got a new sort of dynamic backline, which is really good. We've gone away from having just a big ball carrier in 12. We've got a ball player there now. So a lot of moves and a lot of attack now comes off the 12. It's sort of 12 has been redefined in rugby really as their role. It's not just smash and bang and big hit. It's been having the ability to put people into space and to attack off 12. So I'm really excited about Joe Hawkins, and selection was big for me, and it was announced yesterday. It was done really early, plenty of confidence behind it, and it was sort of saying, right, this is our team, and I think they're going to attack a little bit wider. I don't think we can outmuscle Ireland at the moment because of the big carriers you guys have got and the power you've got, and I think we have to be careful about where we attack. So I think, as I said, that the 12 position is key, and that just gives us 2 ball players now, so we can play a little bit wider. We've got a fairly mobile back row as well, which isn't really used to sort of pick and go in the tight. It's more of a dynamic back row, which will play a little bit wider, and you've got players like Tipperick and Faletau, which can play in those wide channels. So for me, it makes sense to play wide. It doesn't make sense to try and pick and go and to keep it tight against a team like Ireland. So they're the exciting parts. But you need to get it right on the day.
Were you surprised, Tom, by the Lee Halfpenny inclusion? I think it's the first start for him in 19 months. He gets the nod ahead of Liam Williams, you'd imagine, to, I guess, counteract that Irish kicking threat as well. But did they come a little bit out of the blue?
I was quite surprised with his selection. I was quite surprised with Alan Wynne-Jones' selection. The problem we got at 15 is that there's no players coming through, really. There's Lee Halfpenny and Liam Williams, and they're the 2 players that basically Wales have got to rely on. We've seen Josh Adams play a little bit of 15 recently, and he could hold down that position in time to come. But Liam Williams hasn't played much recently. He's had concussion issues. He went off with a bad hand against Breve away in the Challenge Cup. So there'd be a limit to the amount of training that he would have done. What you get with Lee Halfpenny, though, is just someone that's unbelievably solid. He's like a goalkeeper at the back. He won't miss tackles. He won't drop balls. He'll be able to kick the ball out of defence accurately, even very low error count. But I think you limit yourself slightly with that counter-attack ability. And I look at Ireland's counter-attack and someone like Hugo Keenan. He's a fantastic player, and he's a threat everywhere when he's got ball in hand. So as much as it is good in defence to have Lee Halfpenny, I still think it just limits what we can do in attack slightly.
Keith, the point is well made about Gatland naming his team early in the week. It's going to be a rallying cry for the Welsh fans. I haven't heard yet about the roof and what the story is with it, but the atmosphere will be absolutely incredible. From an Ireland perspective, we're very hungry to see what Ryan Baird can do in the team. We're very hungry to see how well any of the players slightly below the top rank in the depth chart might do. But the first week up in the Six Nations, Andy Farrell is going to be true, it looks like, to how he has always picked, and it's best team available for the game, irrespective of long-term planning. And it's worked for him so far. You hope that it's going to work for us around the World Cup, as Tom kindly points out again to us. So what would you do in this scenario? Is it best available 15 to start, best available subs, or is there any room for stick Ryan Baird in the team, keep the rest of the team full and see what happens?
What I think has changed with Farrell over the last period of time is that the manner in which you've laid that out, it kind of shows as if there's an element of risk involved in picking Ryan Baird or something like that. I don't view Farrell's mindset in that way. I think he picks the best team always. He picks the best guys to win the game. He makes certain that certain guys get rested at different times, and I think there are matches where that can happen. But he hasn't been shy in dropping players in. I mean, I think there could be the opportunity of Jamie Osborne getting a run very early. This sounds like a repeating loop, but Six Nations is about momentum. You want to get off to a win. If you don't get off to a win, you're struggling always. Confidence drops very quickly. So if you get a win at the start, everything works. It's whatever decisions he decides he wants to make in terms of that. So I think he more than most, I think the IRFU have dealt with the idea that you earn your crust in the Six Nations, and that's something that's essential. And in terms of all the finances, all the sponsorship, everything that happens, this is a ludicrously huge business, huge competition. This is the one that you drive the whole professional game in Ireland with. So you can't suddenly chop and change too much. But I think if you look at what's happened over the last year in particular, I think he's made pretty decent decisions to bring players in and out. They've worked for the most part. He is willing to have a go. I don't know that necessarily this is the game to do so.
If you're Andy Farrell, Keith, just judging on what you're saying, are you throwing Jamie Osborne in from the start, or is it a Bundy Aki, a more natural, traditional selection? I was trying to make the case for Stuart McCluskey yesterday. That number 12 position is one of the, I guess, the standout question marks over the team this week.
Look, I really think it is. I think Robbie Henshaw is our first number 12, and he's injured. So who are the guys that are going to take it up? I think McCluskey has consistently played well for Ulster when he's played for Ireland, when he's got his chances, which have been few and far between. It hasn't exactly gone his way, and he hasn't got it in a full team. He did in the autumn. He did some very good stuff and then drifted a little, I think. Bundy hasn't played for a while, has been suspended and hasn't been picked then by Connacht. Osborne got a chance and took a chance and looks really, really exciting. But one player is not the same as changing 5 players. So if you think that this guy is a really big, viable alternative and has youth, gas, and all the attributes that you want, yes, you can. It's not a huge risk to change one player. It's a huge risk to change 6 players. But to put one player in, I don't think it's a risk at all. And for me to take the opportunity that we have because of Robbie Henshaw's pretty bad injury record, I think it would be great to have another player that might be the bolter for the World Cup. So I wouldn't see it as a risk putting him in the team.
Tom, the quality of rugby that you expect from Gatland, how quickly do you expect the turnaround to happen? Keith's point about the 23 years ago when we got absolutely annihilated by England. The next week we ended up picking Stringer and O'Gara, Easterby, Shane Horgan, and somebody else came in.
John
Hayes. All of whom went on to have between 80 and 100 caps and completely transformed the face of Irish rugby. Although, interestingly, Gatland ended up, as he would say, getting stabbed in the back and wasn't allowed to take it to glory. In this situation, he's there for the long haul. Everybody knows he's going to be around for this World Cup and the next World Cup. So he needs to manage his resources very carefully. But if for example, things didn't go well, would you expect that there is a core of new players coming through who can affect what he wants to do quickly?
I don't think there's a core of a big group of players coming through. I think we've got certain individuals that will come through, but this is the big worry in Wales. Like when Gatland took over, he had the core of players and he had them for sort of 10, 12 years now. We don't have that strength and depth coming through. There's certain individual players, but he's going to have to do it. It's going to be totally different to 2008 when he came in, when he had this group of players. Now he's got a lot of the players that he's relied on. At some stage they will be retiring, and he's going to have to blood youngsters coming through. So it's very different for him. I think we'll see an instant impact in I think the confidence levels of players on the pitch, the energy levels of players on the pitch, the commitment that maybe we didn't see in the autumn. Losing to who did we lose? Lost to Australia, lost to Georgia. We were really down and low on confidence. So I think he'll install that in players. But I think that's why he's had to pick a lot of old players now for this first test, because he knows what they can do. He's confident in what they can do. It's the World Cup around the corner. I think had it not been the World Cup this year, then he might have gone with a new look Welsh team, and he might have put players out of pasture and brought some youngsters in. But because it is World Cup, he's having to go back to what he knows best, really. But that isn't the future. At some stage, we're going to have to reshuffle, remould this Welsh team, and we're going to have to bring youngsters in because these guys can't go forever.
Tom, there's been a lot made of the Netflix cameras and what they're doing inside each individual camp, and it seems to be some of the Some of the countries are adapting to it maybe easier than others, and some players are adapting to it easier than others. I know the union stand to make, I think it's €113,000 each for the first year. This will air in 2024. As a player, what do you make of the whole thing? Like, I think it was a 4-man crew following the Irish team around in the Algarve this week. Is it a distraction, or is too much being made out of it?
I know Keith Wood would have loved it. I think we can tell by the '97 Lions tour. He'd been all over that and camera every shot. I think it's great for the game. I watched the Drive to Survive, which they did on Netflix. I've watched some of the other ones they've done behind the scenes at football stadiums and football teams, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's a great insight for people into professional game at the top level as well. It's about inspiring youngsters. It's about getting people interested in rugby. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to play rugby, seeing those legends of the '97 Lions tour on that video, and I thought, that is what I want. I want some of that fun. I want to be sucking belly buttons in a bar. I want to be having a few drinks after games. You want that camaraderie, and I think the Netflix show will get that across, and I think it's about growing the game as well. So I can't see many people not wanting to do it. I think maybe some of the coaches might be slightly nervous about what they're going to show, but in terms of the camera crews following the players around, following the team meetings, I think it's massive, and I think it's great for the game. I think it's the way forward. I think the reports in the paper, some of the papers this morning, Keith, suggest that 7 or 8 Irish players have already sat down for interviews with the Netflix crew. Reportedly, Keith Earls and Peter O'Mahony amongst that group. Johnny Sexton maybe not as forthcoming with time. Can you understand?
Social media superstar Peter O'Mahony, that is.
Yeah, well, there you go. Like, can you see why some players wouldn't want to go near any of this?
Absolutely, but it's funny. I think if it grows the game, that's fantastic. I was actually surprised by the amount of money. It seemed to be very small.
Yeah.
I would worry a little bit about editorial control. The idea, Duncan, who was the head of our crew in '97, him and his team were totally in the background, so they never asked you a question. In whatever it was, in the 6 weeks we were on tour, there was no question asked directly of the players, and they kind of drifted into the background. You never really knew they were there, and they weren't. It wasn't intrusive in any way, shape, or form. What you don't actually want to do is have players change their behaviours because they have a camera on them. You know, the sort of unintended consequence of being viewed will change something, you know. So, look, I think it can be great for the game because we're looking to try and make the game bigger. But as always, you just want to make certain that it's all about the game and the game doesn't get affected by it. So, but I can understand why some guys don't want to do it. And, you know, if someone says, well, we want to interview me, and they say, well, I don't want to, I'm concentrating on the game. That's their right too, you know. So, and much contrary to Shanks' line, I was stunned by how much I was in that video in '97 for the very simple reason that
Slash delighted.
There was 170 hours of footage actually was cut down to that. So my mother wasn't particularly happy because of my bad language, but you know, that happens too.
The truth will out eventually. Tom, I guess the point about the people not wanting to be filmed is that there's always some clown in the corner with a camera and their phone live streaming or recording something for Instagram. So they're probably quite aware of the fact that they're potentially being filmed, sometimes accidentally by a teammate, as the Irish women's football team found out.
Yeah, no, there will be. And Keith's right, you know, it is editorial control, really. But I look at all the bad PR going around rugby at the moment, and it's about encouraging youngsters to play rugby when they're young. So, you know, we don't lose them to the system. There's loads of issues with rugby at the moment, and I think this is a perfect way of trying to grow it and get people more excited by it. There's always people that don't want to do media. There's always people that don't want to do interviews, whether it's in the week, whether it's post game. You know, there's shy people and there's extrovert people. So I think, like Keith said, the best way is just sort of blending into the background and trying to let people be themselves. You will have to be a little bit careful around the cameras. Like, you can't be showing all these WhatsApp messages, some videos going through with loud noises coming up. But there'll be a lot of fun in there as well, and there'll be a lot of banter and a lot of people trying to stitch each other up on camera and everything and be part of it, because it's also a bit of a shop window to sell yourself as well, because it's not just about rugby, it's about what you do after rugby as well.
I think that's a key point. We're completely out of time here, folks, but I'm looking for predictions before we go. Keith, you sound confident that Ireland can go over and control the game and win?
Yeah, I am confident. We have to prove it for every minute of the game, but I would hope and think that Ireland would win by 8-10.
We would take that. Tom, what do you think is going to happen?
I think Leinster and Ireland will come over, and I think they'll be too strong. They're too well drilled. They're too good in attack and defence, and I think it could be around 12 to 15 points. Ireland win.
I'm glad you made that Leinster and Bundyaki quip, because if we make it, we get killed by the Munster fans. But
12 to 15 points. You're shithousing us here, Tom, I think.
I've taken the pressure off Wales, right? Because I don't really mean that. I think, I do. I think at the moment, I think where Ireland are, and with Wales and new combinations, I think it's going to be a really tough ask to play such a quality team at the moment who are peaking.
Well, we've hopefully piqued the appetite of everybody watching this morning. Keith Wood, Tom Shanklin, great to have you with us, folks. Thanks a million.
Cheers, gents.
Thanks, everyone.
It's I think that's a good point about the possibility of new stars emerging, and then they use the Netflix cameras as a springboard for something after rugby, because
no personalities. That's the problem.
All of the teams are recording stuff internally anyway. Okay, obviously the press officer has control and will show something to the team management. Player X did this thing, it's quite funny, it's going to go viral if we put it out, can we put it out? And they're like, no, can't do that. Mostly they'll be like, yeah, no problems, that's fine. And the sponsors are looking for content. So that all exists already, and they're used to being filmed. There was a line about how they're concerned about they might say something derogatory about an opponent and it will be misconstrued. A bit like, Razzie Rasmus saying, it's only the Irish lads, what do you? I mean, come on. They always do this. Remember that?
Yeah, Jesus.
Well, so I don't know. I mean, has that damaged Razzie?
Don't think so.
Has that been the thing that you remember about Razzie?
Well, we'll certainly remember it.
I totally forgot about it until that this morning.
But there's talk that the actual teams or the unions will be shown the footage before it's released. But then the question is, who has editorial control?
Can
they can show it to them, but can they actually? Yeah. So you'd wonder. But look, it's a good thing. The Formula 1 drivers, the 20 drivers in the grid weren't known. You know, you could walk past 18 of them in the shops and you wouldn't have known who they were. Same with the team principals. Rugby players are probably more prominent within each country, but I think after this, it could take them to the next level. So I hope even the Simon Zebo phone call in the Lions group. Remember, he made the phone call to asking to be made captain. Who did he make the call to? But those sort of little moments where teams are having bonding sessions and there's a few jokes going on. That's what you want to see. You want to see them being themselves. But as I think it was Keith said, you want them not to be putting on a show. It's just them naturally.
The money isn't great compared to what you might expect.
Gets better year two, I think.
Not much.
Marginally better, yeah.
But the marketing possibilities, and I'm sure the fact that it's going to be on Netflix will be great for the various brands associated with the teams who are on their training gear, who will all feel like, we're actually, this is worthwhile. So, look, you can give us your view. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. It is 8:28 this morning, and OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. I'm delighted to say Tommy Walsh is back because the hurling is back this weekend. Tommy, good morning to you. How are you?
Yeah, good morning, Ger. Good morning, Shane.
How excited are you about the return of the league? Is it like full bore? Yes, finally inter-county action is back. Or are you like, not quite there? How high up is the Tommy dial?
Yeah, well, listen, it's the joy of the split season, I suppose, Jerry. We haven't seen championship since last July. I was at Kilkenny played Offaly in the Welsh Cup over in Callan, full house over in Callan there the first or second week of January. Went over to Rathdowney, then they were playing Laois in the next round, nearly a full house again over in Rathdowney. Now I missed the one under the lights and something else on the Saturday night, but a sold out game below for a Welsh Cup final, 14,000 people below in Wexford Park. I think it's really after working out so far. Listen, I suppose we reviewed year after year, but the split season seems to be after work in regards, encouraging people to go to the games, encouraging people to follow the inter-county, the razzmatazz that's going with. There was fireworks and everything down in Wexford Park. So listen, I think so far so good. everyone's really excited. You know, you're fresh. It's so long since you've seen these inter-county guys. Like looking at the National League starting this weekend, Ger, there's 6 new managers in the Liam McCarthy Cup as far as I can see. Like there's massive change. There's 2 managers, Wexford and Galway, they're only in their second year. So there's huge freshness in all counties. There's huge eagerness to see what will the new managers bring to the game. So I think this National League will all be able to find out about the managers as much as the players.
I was definitely of the view in recent years that the league had completely diminished in terms of responsibility and the bit where you could apply what you see in the league to championship later on for various reasons. But then because this is the first proper year of the shortened season, I do wonder if we need to maybe take more cognizance of the fact that if things go badly early, it's much more difficult for you to get it back on track. There's still some room for you to get it back on track, and obviously Munster and Leinster Championship is all that matters when the end of the year, that's what we'll be talking about. But if you don't start well, it's going to be hard to recover.
Yeah, well, I don't know, do I agree with that, Ger? I would say maybe in past years before the round robin, that may be the case. But like you say, you look at Waterford and Cork, they were in last year's league final. And, you know, it didn't go too well for them in the summer, really. Like Waterford only won 1 game out their round robin after winning the league and winning it convincingly. But what I do think is it's all about finding players. Like, listen, I understand what you're saying. If you're going through a bad run, you've no players, I suppose, showing up their hands that pick me for a championship, then you're starting to get worried. But if you're only losing a match be a point or two, but you find a new corner forward, you find a new centre forward, or 2 or 3 players, maybe that were out of form last year, suddenly building that rich vein of form, or their confidence is back, their mojo is back, well, then you're going places. So I think the league now is probably more important to find players and not necessarily win, but I agree with you on that point. Maybe, you know, your form is maybe, if you start off poorly, maybe it's going in the right direction up towards the top, but I don't think that if you have a bad start in the league that'll have much of an impact on championship, because there's 2 different groups. Like you look at the Division 1, you have Antrim, Kilkenny, Tipperary, Laois, Clare and Westmeath, and towards the second Division 2 you have Wexford, Galway, Cork, Limerick, Waterford and Dublin, which you would see is probably a far more difficult group. Yeah. So it might be easier to get a win in one, you know, and in Division 2 you mightn't get as many wins. And but if you're finding players, Ger, that's what it's all about come championship, because you see, you go back to maybe the 2000s up to as far as probably 2014, 15, you could win an All-Ireland from maybe May to September playing 4 matches. Now you have to play probably 5 or 6 matches in 5 or 6 weeks. So you know, it has changed how you can treat this league. Like, you know, when we were winning leagues back in the 2000s, you could have 6 weeks off before the championship. So you could go, you know, full throttle for the league, and you'd have 6 weeks back to the clubs for 2 or 3 weeks to freshen up and, you know, I suppose regain that freshness that is needed for championship hurling when, you know, intensity is at its highest and the pressure is at its highest. Towards, if you will say run off a big league now, play 5 or 6 games, you know, especially in that Division 2, against all the top teams, probably big, huge crowds, I'd say, will come to these matches. The intensity will be unbelievable. Then you've only a week or 2 off before championship, and you're not just going into a knockout year, you're going into a full round robin again. Just cast your mind back to Waterford. What a brilliant end to the league they had, semi-final and final. You know, they were scoring goals, scoring points. They look like they're, you know, probably people were saying at the time they were the best team in Ireland, even though Limerick were after doing, you know, winning 3 All-Irelands in 4 years. They're after doing the 2 in a row. People were tipping Waterford. They went out and had a kind of a shaky enough start against Tipperary, although they won it in the Munster round robin. But then got beaten in a great match against Limerick, and then just the wheels came off the cart. So I do think more than ever it's time for time in your run, really, more than anything. But at the same time, it's not like a light switch. You can't just turn up to this league and not try, because you can't just switch it on come championship. But I think it is all about rotating around your players and finding players.
Is there a sense of, that's certainly a good point, Tommy. Is there a sense though of shadow boxing to a degree in the league? Because as you say, like in the provincial round robin era, none of the league finalists that year have later played in the All-Ireland final. So clearly there's something there that teams that peak in the league that don't necessarily carry it on into championship.
Yeah, I would say I agree with your second point. It's definitely not about peaking in the league, because it's just too intense. it's like nearly a Premier League now. Like, say, if you have 6 or 7, get into the league final, you could have 6, 7, 8 matches, then go on and you have 5 or 6 in the round robin. That's 11 or 12 matches over a short period of time. So that's very, very intense. And the ability to keep it going with the panels they have, because most teams will be probably picking, even though they have a panel of 30, I'd say more often than not, they'll be picking off probably 20 players really in and out for those games. So I think it's very difficult to do that, to keep at at the top of your game for so long. So as opposed to shadow boxing, I just think it'll be a time for, if you play a player for 2 or 3 games, you give them a rest for a game or 2, then bring them on again. So say if you have 20 players in your mind to start come championship, you might be playing so many of them together with some of the subs, then you switch it around. So they're kind of, you don't play all the strong lads together in one match, then bring on all the subs, Shane, in the next match, and then they get beaten. I would say kind of mixing and matching, really.
It's a brand new era for Kilkenny. What is the feeling like when you're at those matches in Callan? What are people excited about? What are they a bit apprehensive about? What's the general vibe around the place?
Yeah, I suppose the big question is, Brian Cody's got after so long. He won 11 All-Ireland finals, All-Ireland championships. He won numerous Leinster championships, numerous Welsh cups, leagues. He won it all. And this is a new era. Like you're talking about, after Micko went, after Alex Ferguson went, after Jim Gavin went, what's going to happen when these great managers leave? And listen, Kilkenny, they're after putting a good guy in there, like Derek Ling, Ger, the saying in sport, nice guys finish last. I never agreed with that. I think they come in all shapes and forms. Like winners, they have characteristics that are probably common between them all. And one of them is, especially as a manager, that you can inspire players just to believe in that you're going to be champions. Whether if that's in hurling, that's to win a Leinster championship, a league, and All Ireland. It's to inspire the players that they believe maybe they could be come from a junior club or an intermediate club, that they're good enough to play at the top level, the elite level of sport, because this is as elite as professional sport is now. They're putting in so much time. They're 7 days a week now, Ger. And Derek Ling has that, and he's a huge work ethic. I remember him as a player. He was inspiring in a quiet way, a lovely fella, but would inspire you because he was a role model. You tried to follow the way he carried himself. When he was starting off with Kilkenny, he wasn't the Derek Ling. He was only after starting to make the under-21 team, and he was only starting on the road to where he became great as regards Kilkenny midfielders. And he had to sacrifice a lot, career-wise. He was supposed to be up the country. He came back because he wanted to make the Kilkenny team. And he did it. So this guy is tough. This guy is a winner. He was a selector with Kilkenny when they won All-Irelands in 14 and 15. He was a manager of his own club, the Emeralds, when they won an under-21 championship probably 10 or 12 years ago. He was manager of the Kilkenny under-20 team last year that won the All-Ireland. And they're after losing, I suppose, the year before and possibly the year before that. So he's made a tough stuff, this guy. And I think that's what is needed coming in because the aftermath of Brian Cody and all that. Does he have the players? Yeah, I think he does. He'll have 7 or 8 Ballyhale lads come back into play. Cian Kenny had a great year last year. I was watching him over in Callan and again in Rathdowney. I think it was just Rathdowney he was playing. He's gone huge. He's a small guy. Mickey Comfort is the strength and conditioning guy there, Ger, at the moment. And he's putting in huge work the last couple of years. The guys are gone, and you have to buy into the modern game. These guys are gone huge. They're putting on kilos of muscle. Paddy Deeg and Park, young and old, they're all doing it. They're all after buying into it. And Mickey Comfort is key to that. And they do have players like Billy Drennan is coming from that under-21 team. Garrod Dunn, young Mile in the Borough have a few lads in the backs, big strong town club here in town, and a lot of strong players that have a lot of underage success. So yeah, listen, it's exciting times and huge crowds all their matches so far. And what I like about the Welsh Cup this year was, in previous years, they might be playing the under-21 team or the under-20 team. And, it's much more difficult for a lad to put up his hand. But when you're mixing in the young lad with the guy that has all the experience, the Killian Buckleys and the Hugh Lawlers, the Mikey Butlers, then they have a better chance because they're only kind of filling in a gap. They might get a pass and drive it down the field or score a few points, but they're not the main fellas. So I think the league hopefully will be much the same, a mix of experience with youth.
No, I was going to say the return of Davy Fitz is another one that's kind of got us talking, Tommy. And anytime Davy Fitz opens his mouth, we all listen. There was an interesting one at the weekend, like Central Council voting against the Marafonia, the return of the Marafonia onto the pitch, and delegates voted against it. Davy has already spoken out against this. He was saying it's a missed opportunity, doesn't reflect management's need to speak to players during games. Does he have a point? I suppose when Davy Fitz talks, as I say, we're all there to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, so Shane, the reason people listen is because he has won so much. Like he was in Clare, he won an All Ireland, won a National League. He was in Waterford previously 10 years ago, and he say from 2008 till 2011 he won Munster championships. Like this guy, 6 Mile Bridge, he has won club championships. Like, and what he has done below in Wexford, is incredible. Like you remember, Wexford Hurling was on the floor, maybe 10 years ago or that. Liam Dunn came in, and Liam Dunn was probably one of the single most important people that was put into a job down Wexford when he was implemented as the manager, because Liam Dunn as a player had a phenomenal work ethic. He was a tough man. He was a guy that loved the game. He was from a great club, and now Larkaballa won, I'd say they won their first championship in '94. It wasn't the Leinster Club Championship that year, but I think that was around their first. But Larkaballa became a great club in Wexford Hurling after that. But he came from, a love of Wexford and a love of hurling to put in a foundation in Wexford that, listen lads, hurling needs to be number one in your life here. You go on holidays, you go to American holidays, this comes 2 and 3. Hurling has to be one if you want to be on this panel. And he put in a foundation in Wexford Hurling that was absolutely instrumental for when Davy Fitz came. And Davy brought the razzmatazz, Davy brought the enthusiasm, the excitement. And I thought the legacy that Davy left in Wexford, he won the Leinster Championship, was it against Kilkenny? It was there 60,000 at that Leinster final, huge numbers. And the legacy he has left, I thought, was seen in the Welsh Cup final, a sold-out Welsh Cup final between Wexford and Kilkenny, 14,000 people in Wexford Park. And Davy, had a huge part to play in all of that, because the coaching that's going in schools down in Wexford at the moment, in the clubs, they're putting in an unbelievable effort. And that's why people listen to Davy, because he does bring huge interest, huge enthusiasm, no matter where he goes. He's back in Waterford now. He's already said it, Shane, that they played 12 round robin. I know they got to the All-Ireland final there 2 years ago. That was during COVID. It was the knockout championship. But during the round robin Munster championship, where they played 12 games, they've only won 1. So his ambition is supposed to change all that. And I think to get 1 Munster will be his main aim this year as a building block, I suppose, for the future. Mayor Foran is then, Shane, see, the most difficult thing at the moment is you can't hear anything. The crowds are so big at these games, especially when you come to the latter stages of the league and championship, when the grounds are full. Very hard to I suppose, tell players anything. And, you've seen what happened, this was in the club final with Kilmacud and the Glen. Possibly if there was the Mayor Foran in, he would have been able to tell lads that you're on and you're off. Because I know myself coming on the club last year as a sub, like, it is mayhem, you're coming on, and the lad coming on isn't really listening to him because he's so excited to come on, he just wants to score or get the ball. And the lad coming off probably is disappointed. He's in no mood to go around giving instructions and where lads are playing. So, maybe he has a point to play that the Mayor Foran should be still there. And but on the GA's defence, I have to say, the reason they probably got rid of the Mayor Foran was there was lads, weren't they, especially in the football, they were standing out in positions, trying to cut off the pace and that. So they probably deserve some honesty from the team and the players as well. So,
it's a hard one, all right. We'll talk about Limerick over the course of the season. Obviously, lots to talk about. They've had some addition, they've had some subtraction so far, at least for the league anyway. We'll see how that all plays out. But what about Liam Cahill at tip? Because it didn't end brilliantly at Waterford, given that we were all saying that they were genuine All-Ireland contenders after the league last year. And yet here he is back in the job that many felt like he should have had earlier. So, what's for you won't pass you. Is this the right time, the right man at the right moment?
Yeah, well, see, what all these managers will always tell you is when it comes, it's hard to Can you hear me there?
We can, yeah, we're still here. Yeah, no worries.
So when the calling does come, Ger, it's hard to turn it down. Like, if he just turns it down now, is he guaranteed to get it again in 4 or 5 years' time? Maybe when these young lads are, 26, 27. You just don't know. So you nearly have to take it when the chance comes along. I think myself, Tipperary in a transitional period. You have Noel McGrath, John McGrath, you have, Ronan Marr, you have Cottle Barrett. So all these guys are coming to the latter stages of their career, Seamus Callan. But they're still probably the main fellas on that team. You need the young fellas really to stand up and be your number 3, your number 6, your number 11, number 14. And them guys still have to prove themselves, and they have to probably show up. And you'll be hoping in this league, maybe Liam Cahill, he will have the confidence in these players. Because I suppose when Liam Sheedy was there beforehand, Liam Sheedy had confidence in the class of 2010 because they had won the championship for him, the All-Ireland. They again won the All-Ireland in his first year back. So how was he to turn his back on them players that have never let him down? And so he's kept faith with all of those players from 2010. For Liam Cahill, you would imagine, he's won All-Irelands under 20 and under 21. He's won minor All-Irelands with a different group of Tipperary players. So you'd imagine he will have faith and he will know the strengths and the weaknesses of them players, and he will probably try to put them into big roles. I see Michael Breen in the Welsh Cup has already gone back cornerback. He spent most of his underage career in the backs, so it will be interesting. I was looking at their team for the Munster League, not a lot of their players, their names jumped out at me that I knew them straight away. So over this league, I suppose we will learn a lot more about Tipperary.
We didn't even mention Owen Kelly as part of the backroom team at Waterford with Davy. There's a lot of subplots for us to get stuck into this weekend. Looking forward to seeing how it all plays out.
Yeah, and that will be. It's probably not as bad when you're a coach. You're probably more in the background, but it over in the Premier League and in football now, you have to go off and do your badges. And it's gone so professional. It's not just about turning up on a Tuesday night, Thursday night, do 2 or 3 drills and play a match, and then pick your team on the back of a fag box that Friday evening. Them days are gone. And Owen Kelly going to Waterford, Henry going to Galway, Michael Dunn, who, he was in Tipperary before he was in Galway to win the All-Ireland in 2017. He was with Tipperary for 2 years with Eamon O'Shea. Davy Fitz went to Waterford before going back to Clare to win his All-Ireland. It's nearly like your coaching badge, Ger, where you have to go off and learn how to deal with physios, how to deal with, dietitians, how to deal with the doctors, how to deal with the players. You can't turn up and just be a dictator to these players anymore. There's so much going on in their lives other than that. They've careers, and the family life, and so there's so much to learn in the job now. I think the likes of Owen going to Waterford, it's a learning curve really, and they're trying to, I suppose, learn the trade really before maybe to come back home and take on the big job.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. All those, we didn't even talk about those. That's why these games. I know. I get the point you're making, that it's actually about making sure at the end of the league you feel like you've got a panel ready to do battle in the provincial championships, but it does feel like there's going to be big stories coming out of this and how teams respond to those. Limerick were narky through the league last year, and they talked about it. They were definitely getting sucked into battles, and I think they definitely learned from that over the course of the rest of the year. But maybe it was just because they weren't fully fit and they were getting caught in a way that later on in the year they didn't. So I don't know. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's hugely exciting. Limerick last year, sure, everyone was questioning their credentials, whether they had the hunger to come back or they had the discipline to come back and do the 3 in a row, and they answered emphatically, and it's going to be interesting. Limerick are going to have to find players, Ger, I think, so they're a great team now, but now they want to go to the top of the pile with the Kerry team, the football team of the late 70s and 80s, the Kilkenny team of the 2000s, the Dublin football team, the Manchester United, these teams, the New England Patriots, that are around forever, winning championships, over a course of 10, 12 years. But to do that, you remember Jim Gavin when he was at Dublin, Bernard Brogan, he would have made every team in the country at the time was a sub. Did all these players with strings of All-Ireland medals, subs on their team at the latter stages, because Jim Gavin knew that to win an All-Ireland, he had to keep freshening up, to keep it going long-term. He had to keep bringing in new young players. Like Conor Callan, he wasn't around at the start. But Kieran Kilkenny probably wasn't at the start with Pat Gilroy's team, but came along then and drove it to new heights again. And I think for this Limerick team, they've won now 4 All-Irelands in 5 years with, much the same team. I think they're 13 in the team last year in the 2022 All-Ireland final that started 2018 All-Ireland final. So these guys have been on the road a long, long time. And I think if they want to drive it on for another couple of years, 3 or 4 years, they will have to find new players that they don't have to find 5 new players, but even 1 or 2 new players that they can put in on the team that, suddenly it just keeps it going, because as that team gets older, they're putting in huge effort, there's huge work going in the gym, there's huge mileage going on the clock. So that can't go on forever.
Yeah.
And the only way that can go on forever is when you have new blood.
Yeah. Who's going to be there? TJ Reid or Walter Walsh? Tommy, great to have you back. Thanks a million.
Thanks, lads. Best luck.
That's Tommy there giving us some thoughts ahead of the weekend return of the Allianz Hurling League.
I was really interested to read John Fogarty talking yesterday about the traditional Guard of Honour and how it's been got rid of. So it was a pre-COVID thing, but when COVID started, it hasn't happened. So the thought that Cork might give Limerick a Guard of Honour in Páirc Uí Chaoimh this weekend, it's not there anymore. Like Donegal didn't give Kerry a Guard of Honour last weekend. Even a couple of years ago, Dublin came to Monaghan for the first round of the league in Clonus, and Monaghan didn't give them Guard of Honour, beat them. That was the done thing. The first game of the league, the All-Ireland champions always got a Guard of Honour. It's gone.
It used to be like 3 weeks later after the All-Ireland.
Yeah. I suppose when it was a quick turnaround.
But then again, I don't know, maybe we
no respect for the All-Ireland champions.
Rush of progress. We throw away all the good things.
Like Kilmacud getting a Guard of Honour next year in their first club game.
Yeah. And seen the Fianna doing that all right.
Yeah.
8:50 this morning. If you want to get involved, 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. And the OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Kathleen McNamee is with us. We're going to speak with Gilly Flaherty in a moment. Kathleen, we wanted to talk about the WSL transfer window. We were hoping, maybe if you're an Arsenal fan you're not hoping, but we were hoping that Katie McCabe might get a move. It didn't happen.
Yeah, that was a very stressful 24 hours in Kathleen's life. It went from Katie McCabe might be leaving Arsenal to we might be signing Alessia Russo, and I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel like this. Throw in Arsenal signing flipping Jorginho in the middle of it all as well, and it was a roller coaster. I don't think that Katie leaving Arsenal is necessarily to go to Chelsea is a great move, and I'm not just saying that as someone who supports the club. I think Chelsea is an interesting squad. It's very packed already. She hasn't been playing as much at Arsenal the last couple of games, and I don't know, was this like a little bit of a shot in the arm to Jonas Eidevall saying, I could leave, and then you are very much struggling. But even the money that was being talked about, I think she's worth a lot more than that and could have gone for a lot more than that. So if you listen to this week's episode of Koi Gig, Emma Byrne did a bit of sleuthing, and it seemed to be that it was never really on the cards, that maybe there was a bit of chat and a bit of questioning over it, but I don't think it was actually going to happen.
Chelsea mind games?
Possibly, but you're not going to sell Katie McCabe to Chelsea either. It's the same reason why United didn't sell Alessia Russo to Arsenal. You're giving one of your best players, one of the top players in the league, one of the most consistent performers, to your arch rivals. It just wouldn't make any sense whatsoever, especially with the amount of injuries that Arsenal have at the moment and the fact that the squad isn't that deep compared to Chelsea. Chelsea could easily put out 2 starting teams and they would be fairly high performing teams. Arsenal don't have that sort of resources, so it would have been a very strange move from them, especially the fact there's still a year and a half left on her contract. It's not like she has 6 months left and maybe they're trying to cash in or something. So yeah, I think it was something that was just kind of questioned, but she's there for the time being, and hopefully this does mean more playing time for her.
All right, Gilly Flaherty is with us. Gilly, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning.
We were talking about Katie McCabe there. What was your take on that whole what are we saga? Is it? Has it reached? It hasn't quite reached saga stage yet, but it's getting there.
Yeah, it was released quite late, about 10:30, I think, Saturday night. So I spoke about it on a podcast I do on a Monday, and it was just obviously a lot of us were ready to go to bed, if not people out partying, and they get this news in, and it was just out of the blue completely. I know. Obviously, Katie's still got 18 months left of her contract, but it's just, I know a left wing back is something that Chelsea have really struggled to replace. I think since losing Claire Rafferty when she retired a few years back, I don't think that they've ever really had an left wing back, if that makes sense, or a left back. I mean, you've got Magda Eriksson at the moment playing there, she's not a natural left back. She's a centre back doing a job. And obviously then you've got Jess Carter and Neve Charles both switching flanks, who neither are left backs, either like left footed. So yeah, I think obviously they probably highlighted Katie as a target in that sense because obviously of what she offers. But yeah, obviously I think we've still 18 months left to go. And it was just so random, I think, how close it was to the end of the transfer window closing, just to come out of the blue. Normally in women's football, you have a little bit of a hearsay, a little whispers happening beforehand, but no one had heard anything except just this random launch on a Saturday night.
It did seem like one of the more random transfer windows that I've ever experienced. Even the Alessia Russo to Arsenal links, like that came quite late on in the transfer window as well. The Beth England deal initially, I think that surprised everyone, you know, even just the amount of money that she went for. Do you think it's shown a bit of a, I don't know, it feels like there's been a bit of a culture shift in women's transfers and it's been slowly building, but it seems to be this transfer window, it's really coming to the fore?
Yeah, no, massively. And I think I was on Sky Sports News yesterday doing deadline day for 2 hours. And obviously it was just, even there as a former player now sitting there and having the WSL spoken about on Sky Sports deadline day and the figures that are being thrown around for obviously Alessia Russo. Like, I never in my wildest dreams thought that would happen whilst I was still even involved in football. And again, I think in regards to the Beth England one, I think a lot of people knew she had to leave in regards to obviously the World Cup coming up. She needed to get minutes. I didn't think that fee would have been linked to Beth though, in all honesty. Not that I don't think she warrants it, but I just think obviously we're talking about the likes of Pernille Harder coming in for around about a similar figure and obviously Sam Kerr, and I just never... It's nice to see an English player being linked to that amount. So obviously, yeah, I think that signing had to happen. I just didn't think the fee that would come with it would link with it. But I think obviously the other, like Jordan Nobbs, who left Arsenal, needed to play minutes. Obviously, a lot of these girls are seeing the World Cup coming up and know that they have to, especially with England and Serena, they know that they have to be playing to be in contention. So yeah, but it's fantastic for the women's game to see the prices being thrown around that they was, because in all honesty, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you would have dreamed of something like that.
So the Alessia Russo deal didn't happen in the end, but there was, again, strong reporting that 2 world record bids were made for her. What do you know about that? And should we just expect these clubs to start selling players to each other in a way that hasn't happened previously, but actually because this is... You know, because there's so much money in the league that there's not really many other markets for them to shop in. So that's just the way of it now. Yeah,
like I was sitting talking about it last night, and I just said it's a catch-22 situation really for Man United, because they could, obviously Alessia's out of contract in 6 months' time, so they could lose her for free. So they have had offers of contracts, and they've had negotiations, and they haven't got anywhere. So I know they're probably hoping to keep hold of her to get into the Champions League this year, which is obviously something that they've targeted the last few seasons and fell short. Obviously, they're doing really well at the moment in the league. And obviously, unless that drastically happens, it'd be tough for them to lose out on Champions League. But you're being offered, I heard that the final figure was around 500,000 mark for a player. You're taking the risk that you're hoping and banking on that you qualifying for Champions League is going to be enough to keep Alessia. If not, and she does go, then you've got to really take the hit of the 500,000, but then probably hoping that with getting into Champions League, that's a big enough attraction to bring players in if Alessia does go. So I think it's a difficult one for Man United. I said yesterday on Sky that me as a player, if I'm in that dressing room, and we're going for Champions League and we're at the top of the table and we're having a fantastic season, and the club then go and sell our number one striker, for me, I'm looking at that and thinking, well, what's your ambitions? If this is where we're at now and you still would consider selling her, you either got to bring in a replacement, or you're just telling us really that you're hoping that what we've done is enough, and that, not saying that the rest of Man United players aren't good enough to get him into the Champions League. But Alessia Russo is their number 9. You know, she's their main player. But again, the link of 500,000 to an English player as well. And I just said, I don't know why another top English player, a club would sell to another club. Obviously, Man United sell Alessia Russo to a direct rival of Arsenal. Arsenal obviously below them at the moment, but they're battling in with each other. So you basically just feeding another team to be successful. But I think obviously the difficult point yesterday was the fact of Alessia's only got 6 months left of her contract.
It is more awkward as well, Gilly, mid-season. Like in January, I know yourself and Kitty Chapman moved from Arsenal to Chelsea in January, I think it was as well. But it makes it more awkward for the big clubs when you're selling right in the middle of a season, especially when you're going for the title against that club. Yeah,
and obviously when me and Katie left, obviously we was in a different league. So we went in the January, but obviously we was in the summer league. So I personally would never... I'd find that quite hard to leave a club, I think, mid-season anyway. But yeah, it is. It's like it's normally the January transfer window is really quiet for women's football. I said normally in this window you'll get a lot of free contracts or free agents. Like you get a lot of players from the Scandinavian league come over because they're out of season, so it's their end of season, and then you'll tend to get American players come over because the NWSL is just starting back up now, but that ends at the end of the, obviously, like October, November time. So then normally players who are coming in January get through then. So normally you don't rarely see really an English player to another English, or an English club sell to another English club. But obviously there's been quite a lot of movement this window, and I just think it's exciting for the women's game. Like obviously we know that there's going to be a lot of transfers that happen at the end of the season. But yeah, I think obviously for it to happen in January, and the men's football have it, the buzz and that of the January transfer window, and it was nice to be a part of it yesterday with the women.
Yeah, I was away for the last couple of days and like not checking my phone or Twitter or anything for all the final deadlines, which is why some of these like the Russo McCabe ones came like such a shock to me. But it was so nice. I was sitting in a pub and like Sky Sports deadline day was on, and I could just follow everything that was happening. Like that was how I was being updated by about the transfers. And like whenever the Russo thing fell through, they went with like a big breaking news, and it was just so nice being like, this is the normal now. It doesn't actually make a big difference, you know. We can report on these things equally and it's not taken away from either side. And even having people like yourself on it as well, Gilly, it was great. For you, what was the smartest signing of this transfer window? Like I think Aston Villa have done particularly well with some of the signings they've brought in.
I think Aston Villa, with obviously Stanley Forth coming in and Jordan Nobbs. Obviously, you're looking at that midfield with them two and Kenza Darley. And I think you're looking at their results, obviously, with a great draw against Man City. And I think I wouldn't say the pressure's on them now to get further up the table. But obviously, the last couple of seasons, they've finished a lot lower and still made decent signings. I think now, obviously, as the season goes on this season and going to next, there's going to be real pressure on them to move up the table with the signings that they've got. But I think Tottenham as well. Tottenham obviously getting Beth England, Iwabuchi as well, a fantastic midfielder. Again, two great signings. For me, with Tottenham, though, I worry more defensively. Not that I say I don't think their defence is good enough, but I just think sometimes teams want to strengthen to move further up the table and sign forwards and sign midfielders, but don't necessarily look at their back line and strengthening that. So yeah, I think obviously that side, I think obviously Liverpool getting Tash Dowie yesterday on loan. I know obviously playing there previously that they've got a great setup and a great team, but it's just obviously the goals and the creating the chances that have let them down. So I think obviously Tash going there, she's a proven goal scorer at this level. And I think she'll be a huge help in pushing them further up the table.
The Liverpool stuff is very interesting as well, Gilly. Leanne Kiernan's injury, notwithstanding, that's something like I guess we're keeping a close eye on over here. You would have played alongside Niamh Fahey as well. She probably one of the more marketable Irish players at the moment, and the fact that she's the Liverpool captain. What would she like to play against? What are the biggest strengths in her game that you would have known from playing with her?
Both of them two are great girls. But yeah, Niamh, obviously I played with Niamh at Arsenal when we was there. I then played with her at Chelsea. And then, to go back and play alongside her for the last 6 to 8 months, like, she's just I'd say she never ages. Like, she's just such a senior pro, and she just does the good things well, you know. She's not, I think obviously she understands coming back up to this league, the quickness of it, the way the league has changed, obviously, since being down in the Championship with Liverpool. But she's just so clever. She's in the right places at the right time. She keeps it simple. She leads the team well. Centre forwards can't cope with it because she gets so tight to them and don't give them the respect and let them turn. And that's what you want. But yeah, fantastic girl. And obviously Leanne Kiernan, I know she's had a little bit of a setback. But again, she's going to be huge both for Liverpool and for Ireland going forward. So the quicker she can get herself sorted and get back onto the pitch, the better it'll be for everybody.
We're here in February for that. Is that right? Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah.
That would be good.
I think so.
Plenty of time to bang in some goals in advance of the World Cup.
And just get up to match fitness again as well, which would be great.
Sorry, go on, Kathleen.
No, I was just going to ask you a little bit about, we obviously saw yesterday that Liverpool are interested in buying back Melwood after selling it in the first place. And I know Matt Beard has talked a lot about, there was some questions over why the women didn't just join in on the new men's training ground. But he said very specifically that they wanted somewhere separate, especially so that they could house academy and under 21 players. What do you think about the way it's progressing? I think he said like 2023, end of 2023 was kind of around the time that they were hoping to have something set in place specifically for the women.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw it because Jamie Carragher tweeted about it, but I just thought, I didn't know if it was just him having a laugh or if it was genuine, because obviously there was no real thing about Liverpool men in the transfer window. So I thought he was just putting it out there to go as a bit of a banter. Do you know what I mean? So then obviously when Liverpool done a statement on it and that, then obviously then I realised it was actually legit. But yeah, I think the women deserve their own place, they're currently sharing with Tranmere at the moment. But I know that the vision of the club, and they want their own place. They want a place to call home. And again, I think the good thing is with Liverpool is that they're not just in it for the short term. Obviously, I think Liverpool men have learnt from, obviously, previously when Liverpool women got relegated and they were saying that there weren't much support for the women's team, and obviously Klopp come out about it, and Liverpool then obviously got back behind the women and really supported them. And obviously just in my short time there, the support was fantastic, and anything that I needed personally I had access to. So yeah, I think for the club they obviously have a long-term vision. It's not that they're thinking they're going to come up to the WSL and that be it and see you later, get on with it. There is a long-term vision there to build their own place. They're really big on the academy and the youngsters, and Beardy especially wants to be a manager that brings a lot of young players through. Obviously, you've got like Hannah Silcox there. You've got Zara Shaw coming through, who's a 16-year-old playing way above her ages. So they're really big on youth, which I think is fantastic. And you're looking at obviously the other clubs in the league, a lot of them have their youngsters coming through, and there's no reason why Liverpool can't do the same. But again, as a professional outlet now, things that might have been able to get away with before, or standards that they might have been able to have before, that's not the case now, and there's so much, I think, scope inside the women's game. Obviously, you're looking at like last season when Birmingham players come out about the standard that they had at their training ground and the facilities and what they got offered. Like, players won't stand for it anymore and they won't accept it. And so, yeah, but I think it's exciting for Liverpool women. I know there's been a bit of delay and they was hoping for it to be sorted, but I think they come across a few complications. But yeah, it's fantastic news, and hopefully it's sooner rather than later.
Gilly, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you.
It's Gilly Flaherty there giving us some thoughts on the WSL transfer window, and the latest episode of Coigig is available now.
It sure is.
All right.
I'm not there though, so it's not as good. Obviously.
No.
Alana Canaan stepped in, did a great job. There was still a Sligo person.
There's no I in
helm,
team,
so.
Kathleen. Wow. This week's episode of Coigig, a good solid 5 out of 10. Next week it'll be back to the usual 10 out of 10 with Kathleen. 8 minutes past 9 this morning here on OTB AM. Here's what's on Sports Radio for you today. Chris Waddle is OTB Gold at 1 o'clock. Coigig at 3, the subpar version. Our retro panel is Hearts and Holland and Kenny Cunningham. Gold at 4 and more gold at 6 with Paul McGrath. After the break, we've got John Duggan in the studio.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB GAA.
Well, it was wide, like, you know. Everybody, I don't know how many thousand people were here today, but I'd say every one of them thought it was wide except the umpire. But anyway, so look, that's what happens when you're in away grounds. You don't tend to get breaks.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
OTB Sports in your pocket. Listen to OTB Sports Radio 24/7.
Until that habit is broken, do you not realise how crazy those things were?
Watch your favourite OTB videos.
The benefit of being suspended, me and Scalzi were out every night, probably night before the game.
Read all the latest sports news and opinions, all in one place, the OTB Sports app. Listen, watch, read. Wherever you are, we're always with you. The OTB Sports app, available to download now from your app store.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
10 minutes past 9. John Duggan is with us this morning. John, how are you?
Good, Shane. And Ger, how's form, Ger?
Yeah, pretty good.
I'd have a think there. You could have said Nathan. You could have said
it's
Joe.
hump day.
That's the 4:15 start. When you have the first 4:15 start of the week is always an absolute sledgehammer.
Yeah. Well, you were calling. What were you call? You were calling something else. You were calling Adrian Nathan or vice versa. One of the days, yeah. Which is it can happen. It can happen.
We got there. We got there. In the
cool
end.
story, bro.
We got there in the end.
Yeah, it's old age, I think, lads.
It is.
Hasn't happened to me just yet, but
yeah, welcome to your 40s.
Yeah,
there you go.
So what's going on this morning? Matt Doherty gone to Atletico on a permanent deal, and Pedro Parro joining Spurs from Sporting Club de Portugal. As Matt Doherty played, 1/3 of the matches as a starter for Spurs in the Premier League this season. Conte obviously didn't fancy him. If Emerson Royale is still at the club, and this is a chance now for Matt Doherty to, he's only got there until the end of the season, but to get some first team football.
It's an incredible life story. Like, you know, you're going to work for one of the most charismatic managers in world football, and you're going to learn a lot. And if maybe he wants to be a manager in the future, maybe he doesn't. It never, I've never heard him talk about what comes next after football. But as Dan, I think, was making the point in the Indo today, it's like you're suddenly on that carousel where the rest of Europe, like, it's not anything is on the cards now. Once you've been at Spurs and Atletico Madrid, you could fetch up at AC Milan, you could fetch up in Germany, you could fetch up in Paris.
Well, the help is when you've got Jorge Mendes as your agent or his company. That definitely is a help in that regard. I do though feel that, like, if you look at how Kieran Trippier progressed from going to Atletico Madrid after leaving Spurs, and now he's one of the best players in the Premier League this season. So there's definitely potential there. There's always rumours as well about Simeone maybe leaving in this summer.
Yeah.
So we'll have to wait and see what happens to Matt Doherty. I thought he was fine. It was fine. His tenure at Spurs, it's fine. Didn't spark the world, but look, he's got a chance now, and I think the key thing for Stephen Kenny is that he's playing first team football. And will he?
Is it the sexiest Irish transfer abroad since Liam Brady?
Robbie Keane.
Oh, maybe, yeah, sorry.
Keane gone to Inter as a 17-year-old.
Yeah. But it's just one of those, we love to see the little Irish flag beside the...
Oh, yeah.
Or even on the back of the match programmes. You'll have Atletico Madrid as one of the Irish clubs. You know, it's different. I like it. I used to like seeing Levante on the back of the programmes when Ian Hart was there, but it just adds a spice. He's played under some top managers. When you think of the list of managers that Matt Doherty would have played under now. And Roy Keane is an assistant, of course, as well. So.
Nuno Espirito Santo.
Yeah. Some big characters.
Chelsea have spent £323.3 million on transfers in January alone.
How does that make you feel, John?
That they've got the monopoly board and we don't. Enzo Fernandez, now British transfer record, €121 million over 8.5 years. So there's the accounting process is that they will.
They weren't allowed to do that. I thought they'd close that loophole. Obviously, not fast enough.
Not fast enough. That the depreciation over time.
Isn't that great though? Oh, that loophole, we've closed that. It'll be next year before that actually happens.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, everybody else can keep.
I can't like Joe Felix feels like 20 years ago.
We were saying this yesterday. I had forgotten.
Yeah, Mudryk.
Mudryk Saga's saying,
Mudryk, you're the guy. You're yesterday's man now. It's now Enzo Fernandez, the guy today. Who'll be tomorrow? So 8.5 year deal.
Has anybody written out their team?
Yeah,
the depth chart is
Graham Potter, poor man.
As somebody else pointed out, and they still have Kai Havertz as their centre forward, and they still have one of those two goalkeepers as their goalkeeper. Who maybe his coaching will turn Kepa into a world class goalkeeper. Maybe.
Jorginho going to Arsenal for 12 million.
Do they still have a 37-year-old centre-back? 38-year-old centre-back?
Chelsea do, yeah. Well,
what are they doing?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want to be Graham Potter as well remunerated as he is. You wouldn't want to be him. Trying to work that all out.
Sort of the egos in that dressing room, trying to keep them all happy. Not a chance.
Yeah.
Not a chance. Potter, interesting to see how he deals with that.
Marcel Sabitzer gone to...
Is Aubameyang still there?
Who?
He's still at the club. Aubameyang, yeah.
Yeah.
What a weird team.
Yeah, it is strange.
The weirdest team in the history of football. It is literally we should take a moment for the joy of living at the end of civilization, where Chelsea are able to do this and put this team together. It is like there was a time when Silvio Berlusconi was signing players for world record fees because they were good looking, right? I just momentarily forgotten the name. Gianluigi Lentini. He signed him because he's a good looking boy. It's 12.5 million. Lentini crashed his car and was never the same player after it. He recovered to play some Serie A football again, but he was injecting him into one of the best teams in the world at that stage, who had first Sacchi and then Capello as their managers, and that was the weirdest team that you'd ever seen when Berlusconi started to play God. Now, what is going on?
Your man must have like a bat phone, one of those red phones, Todd Bailey. Like, he must have one of these super phones that he just picks up the receiver and there's somebody on the other end. Get me him for 100, 200. No, I don't care. I'll pay 300 million. Keylor Navas joining Nottingham Forest on loan from PSG was a good one that I saw yesterday as well. Jorginho, as I mentioned, I think that was a good move for Arsenal from an experience point of view. 12 million. So Newcastle into the Cup final, League Cup final, 2-1 win over Southampton last night. Sean Longstaff scoring twice. It's funny, like the Saudi whole ownership thing is just like completely now. You see all the fans, the hope and passion and pride and winning's been brought back to Newcastle, and now it's, it doesn't matter. The Saudis on it.
Interesting piece in the FT at the weekend. Was it the FT or was it the London Times? Where they went off and they wrote this piece about Saudi Arabia, and it starts with a doctor in the desert at a rave talking about taking ecstasy and how generally life is much better and freer now ever since MBS assumed power, so long as you follow the rules. But as soon as you step outside the rules, well, things don't go very well for you. It's like they've like society has become much more open, but you can't criticize the powers that be, and it's just a really interesting global experiment that's happening, and Newcastle are a pawn in that. Live Golf is a pawn in it. The Phil Mickelson photographs, have you seen Phil?
No.
Phil is a man transformed.
Physically?
Lopped off 20 pounds, he says. He's at his college weight, and last year was a blip when he couldn't hit snow off a rope last year, when they'd invested 350 million in him, and he chronically underperformed. I presume there was a lot of pressure on him to come back this season and start playing some good bloody golf, because nobody wants to see Phil Mickelson.
The thing about it is nobody's going to see it, are they? They'll see the Saudi International, but
and they've got a TV deal now with a network.
CW or something.
I hadn't heard of them before, but like
apparently they're the Dave of the USA.
There is a bit of me that wonders if the European Union actually really, or the European Tour hope they lose the court case, so that the live golfers could only play the European Tour events. All of a sudden, the European Tour would be the best tour in the world.
Yeah.
If secretly they're like, maybe we could just like make an error on our filings. Just make sure you don't file the right document on time, and we lose, and we have to have a year and a half where all of the world's best golfers are playing against Rory McIlroy in Europe every week.
It was. You'd wonder if would Rory have made that putt without the live juice in his veins.
I don't know. I think that the win was hugely important for him.
And Shane Lowry partying with his caddy, which was an interesting story over the last few days. Bo Martin.
End of an era.
So the chemistry gone, and big year for Shane Lowry, and he'll have to have a new looper in the bag.
Surely with caddies though, it's just a life expectancy. Like 2 or 3 years is more than, you're so close to the person for that length of time that's a natural enough end of
the Harry Diamond situation is like they're best mates, you know.
Yeah, Ronan Flood and Harrington.
Well, they're
it can work for a long term.
They're brother-in-law, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
hard to sack the old brother-in-law, wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
Christmas dinner is like,
that's a strange barbecue we're having today. After I sacked you last week.
Yeah.
And then we don't really know what's going to happen with Kilmacud and how they feel about this ruling that there has to be a replay now for the All Ireland Club final. They've got until Friday to appeal to the Central Appeals Committee, but why would that be any different? So we could be going to the Disputes Resolution Authority and an independent tribunal to decide what happens here. And what will Kilmacud do? How will they play? Because that's what they've been ordered to do now. So
play the bloody game.
It's back in their court. I was watching back last year's final this morning between Kerry and Galway in the inter-county game, and announcement goes out over the tannoy, but it's very, very quick. Players in and out. And look, that has worked, but ultimately that has to change now. Yeah. But I was reading out the weekend about the Garth Brooks money. They made so much money out of the Garth Brooks concert. There's plenty of money to have a formalised process in GA where you hold up a board, you stop play, and it has to go that way now.
How long have they had the boards?
Since the dawn of time.
No, in the GA, have we always had the boards going up? Does anybody remember the introduction of the boards?
It's been around a while, hasn't it?
Has it?
It's one of these things, because it just happens, we don't compute it in our minds visually.
Because it's not important.
Yeah, and now it is.
Everybody knows when a sub comes on, a sub goes off. Yeah. Everybody knows from under 10 football. The first thing you learn is, sub, okay, I have to go off because that's my job.
I'm sorry, you don't need money to make substitutions properly. You need a modicum of common sense, I think.
I just think it has to be very much, we're stopping this now, like in a Premier League soccer game.
Well, it does because apparently people can't follow the age-old bit where one comes on and one goes off. That was too complicated for us to manage in the biggest game of the year. I mean, we got lost in the moral maze here. When what's the right outcome? The right outcome is a replay. You can't win a game with 16 against 15. You can't do it.
They could have fined them.
They could have fined him, but that wouldn't have been right either, because they can.
But they would have put the whole thing to bed.
but I don't think it would have.
You don't think so?
Well, because if I'm Dublin versus Kerry in an All-Ireland final, and I think I'm going to be able to get an advantage by putting a 16th man on, and the precedent is a fine, I'm paying the fine.
Throw me in, coach.
Paying the fine. Yeah. I'm
going to ring that big benefactor.
People will do anything to win.
Well,
right?
Where does it stop? Could they have 19 players?
You have to change the rules. You have to apply the rules to make sure that people don't think that they can.
I just think it was inadvertent. I did feel.
Well, look, they haven't told us. Do you know? They haven't come out and spoken about it publicly. And that's what you think, right? But we don't know. And here's the thing: it doesn't really matter if it's inadvertent. Did you benefit from it? Yes or no? Yes, you did. You had 16 men on for a period of the game. Game over. That's it. Your moral authority's gone. Anyway, sorry.
Bring on this replay.
Shit limericks.
Oh, no, that's not.
Oh. There once was a boy from the sticks who wanted to write good limericks. Had rhymes like a bard, just found it quite hard to not come across as a Shane Hannon's shit limericks on OTB AM.
There you go. Sting and all. And a little bit of distant music, eerie music in the background. I mean, I'm going to have to write a few limericks, but we're waiting on submissions so people can actually send in their own. That's the whole point of this slot.
Let's be having you.
So stop making me have to write these things. This morning's 3 limericks, lads, and John, you can react to these as well. They're on the theme of Wales, and this is a call out to every single Welsh person. It's a call out to Warren Gatland. It's a call out to all the Welsh players ahead of this weekend's action on Saturday afternoon in the Six Nations. So I've written 3 little Welsh themed limericks for you. So you can rate these, lads. They probably get gradually more and more insulting towards the Welsh people as they go along. This is limerick number 1. They have the voice of Tom Jones and his dulcet, sexy Welsh tones. But we have Van der Fleer, the World Player of the Year, and this Saturday all they'll have are their moans.
Living down to the title of it, Shane. I love it. I love it. Leaning in.
Risky stuff.
Yeah, the risky stuff. This one is for Warren Gatland. This one is for Warren G. Welsh form's as ugly as Nanny McPhee. Your team is as weak as your symbol the leak, and away win we will guarantee.
Who's Nanny McPhee?
Nanny McPhee, everyone gets the reference, yeah. Movie, pimples in the face, objectively ugly, bit like the Welsh form. This one, John, is probably the most insulting, the third one towards Welsh people, and I apologise in advance. Ireland will enter the House of the Dragon, but Welsh hopes they are a flagon. The valleys are shite, Bale was only alright, just stick to the sheep you've been shearing. So a bit of a beaten one there.
Not me.
Is this going to be
Wales Online?
Wales, I was just going to say Wales Online.
at Shane Hannon 1.
Yeah, 1. It's 0-1, but if you want to get the right one. But I just feel like we've been too nice to the Welsh this week. Ordinarily, we've been calling them out. So yeah, those 3. You can tell me which one you preferred out of 1, 2 and 3, and I'll continue along those themes. But this week's theme had to be the Welsh, I think.
Okie doke. It's is it time for a quick break? No break. It's time for Deal or No Deal.
Hi, Royce. Matty Taylor. I can see him getting his car. I've decided to go to Bolt. I'm waving him going out the car park.
Just love moving teams, and then you have to do an initiation.
They just don't seem to be able to get deals over the line.
It was one of the weirdest transfer windows of all time. An absolute record amount spent by Chelsea. I think, would Chelsea have broken all the previous records on their own? Chelsea spent 323 million in the January transfer window. Phil is with us. We're going to start though with Matt Doherty. A good deal for Matt Doherty, a good moment in Matt Doherty's career?
Yeah, well, if he's going to get into the team, he's going to have to get in ahead of a World Cup winner, Molina, who's the current right back, and at the moment, Simeone seems to be playing a 4 at the back, which obviously we kind of associate Matt Doherty with being a wing back. But yeah, we were talking here yesterday about, you know, what kind of transfer deadline day could we expect, and then the Matt Doherty news broke, and that definitely
just after we were off air.
Yeah, no, but it definitely got everyone's interest because Atletico is a huge club.
Yeah.
I mean, they're one of the big 3 in Spain. Diego Simeone, getting to play for Diego Simeone. What will he pick up playing for him?
We all know
the dark arts.
Yeah.
Show the rest of the Irish
Hogwarts.
team.
Yeah,
exactly.
If we were to become one of the most annoying pains in the hole to play against in world football, I would be delighted.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, you were talking about it there. You got to do whatever it takes to win.
You'd want Matt Doherty just running one of the Irish training sessions before the French game and just doing a whole lesson on Simeone tactics and shithousery. Well, just like basically Matt Doherty up at a chalkboard or a whiteboard.
This is what I've learned in 3 weeks, lads.
Yeah,
more than I've learned in a lifetime.
He's going to need it if he's probably going to be marking Mbappe.
Surely Antonio Conte knows a thing or two about this too. We're underrating Antonio Conte's. In fairness, Shane made the point. He's worked for some really, really brilliant managers now, and like again, I've no idea if he wants to go into management, but he's going to have a good book, you would hope, and plenty of good stories at the end of this. But equally, like if he was to become a coach, it's a different path he's taken.
Yeah, and look, there's going to be a lot more Irish people watching Spanish football on a Sunday night or Sunday afternoon, the kickoff times, whatever happens. But the way it's worked out, the fact that the Spurs contract was terminated means that if it doesn't go well from an Atletico, he's a free agent in the summer, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of suitors there.
Yeah.
And if it goes well, he gets a permanent deal with Atletico.
Win, 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 win. That's it.
Spanish weather. He's got quality of life over there.
What time of year to be heading over to Spain? You know?
Yeah,
perfect. What a move!
Sprung.
I mean, London's pretty good weather-wise.
Not bad. Yeah, further south. Yeah,
better than Wolverhampton.
Shane Duffy's move to Fulham was made permanent. He'd been on loan here. This is an accounting procedure, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not getting a kick of the ball at Fulham. So going back to what we were talking about, the international game in March, that would suggest that he's not going to play against France. And I think the general feeling, even when Stephen Kenny took over, that players like Shane Duffy would be phased out. But in fairness, when Shane Duffy came back into the team, because he wasn't playing well at the time when he was with Celtic, he was having a tough time off the pitch as well. And he kind of came back in, and he still poses that goal threat that, you know, we find ourselves 1-0 down, and the panic at the end, just start lumping the ball in. And Shane Duffy's always good for a goal or setting up a goal, but yeah, you'd be surprised if he gets much game time between now and then with Fulham.
Manchester United ended up having to sign somebody because Christian Eriksen's injury proved to be much worse than was feared. They're talking about late April, early May for him to return from the ankle injury caused by Andy Carroll in the FA Cup match. Erik ten Hag is out saying these types of challenges are absolutely ridiculous. We've seen it now, two big games in a row in the Cup where players have had significant injuries because of these types of tackles, and maybe we need to have a conversation around that. But they've gone and they've signed, I don't know, is it Sabitzer? Sabitzer.
Bits in the middle. Yeah.
Sabitzer.
It's a good deal, isn't it?
Do you know what?
Is it a good deal? Is he a good player?
He is a good player.
He's versatile as well.
Yeah, he is. He, I would say, is more dynamic than Christian Eriksen. I would say Eriksen's a bit of a cooler customer when under pressure, but like Eriksen, Sabitzer has a decent shot in him. If he's got a sight on goal 30 yards out, he's going to have a shot, and he can play in a few different positions. And it just actually shows that the difference a few months makes for Manchester United, where, you know, the news breaks that Eriksen's out until late April, and then an hour later they're being linked to Sabitzer, And you're thinking, geez, that actually makes a lot of sense.
The point is as well, so they've got West Ham in the FA Cup 5th round. They've got probably a Carabao Cup final against Newcastle. They're fighting for top 4, and they've got Barcelona in the Europa League. The fact that they're fighting on 4 fronts is why they've bought Sabitzer. Like, if they were out of 2 of those cups at this stage, mightn't have even made the move. But they need options with Ericsson out.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, it's a loan move.
In the push for top 4, they had to make a move, right?
Yeah.
Because he clearly is using the players who are there, but do we think McTominay has a long-term future? I'm not even sure Fred has a long-term future. Like, these players are improving under Ten Hag, but if he can replace them with players who he thinks are even a step above and have a higher ceiling, then he's going to do that. I think to your point, Phil, like in previous years, the injury would have happened. They would have been linked with a gazillion players. I mean, they were linked with a gazillion players yesterday, obviously, when the news came through. But nothing would have happened for months and months and months and months. They would have signed a player replacement in the summer, by which time it was too late.
Yeah, and then you're just, as you said, the term you used yesterday was the banter era. Like, it's over at Manchester United under Eric Ten Hag, where they're starting to do things sensibly, and they haven't let players go out either. There was talk that Alanga might go out, but it goes back to what you're saying, Shane, is that they need that bit of depth, where there is certain games where you got to rest players, and you've got 5 substitutions, so sometimes you just got to grind it out for an hour, and then you bring on your impact players and you get the win.
Tell you who wasn't having it yesterday was Paul Merson on Sky. Panic buy, doesn't get playing for Bayern. That wasn't having Sabitzer to United whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know how much of the Bundesliga Paul Merson
well, there
watches.
is that as well, yeah.
But look, this guy is...
Thiago didn't play that much for Bayern, did he? And he's been okay for Liverpool, you have to say. He's been a good signing.
He's a veteran international. He's only 28, but he's got...
Did Thiago play every game for Bayern? Am I wrong about that?
Oh, well, Thiago was brilliant in the Champions League final when they won it. No, like, Thiago's problem has always been injuries.
Yeah.
So that's why when I saw Liverpool linked with N'Golo Kante, I was like, Liverpool don't need another injury-prone midfielder.
The last thing they need, in fact.
No, definitely not. But they decided just to sit out the January transfer window after Cody Gakpo. They just moved away from the window, went back to the corner of the room, and that was that. And Everton the same.
Everton were clawing at the window, though.
Everton is just... You kind of... We talked, obviously, about whether they could get Bielsa interested in coming on board. If they had managed to get him in, which obviously they didn't, and then done nothing in the transfer window, we'd be reading a statement out now.
Bielsa's resigning.
Is it true that Bielsa wanted the under-21s job, not the senior job?
He obviously wanted the senior job, but he didn't want it.
No.
He basically looked at it and said, no, I'd need the whole pre-season, which is what he tends to do anyway. He does. But I suppose you kind of, if you're Everton, you have to talk to him to see, could you convince him that, you know what, break the tradition, see, can you come in? And he obviously assessed it. He thought, no. But do you know what? I will have a look at the under-21s and I will build them up. And
most Bielsa thing ever.
Yeah, but it's... look, they've got Sean Dyche. We're going to find out in the next few months, was Frank Lampard the problem? If Sean Dyche gets Everton, I was going to say Burnley, if he gets them working their way up the table with the same group of players but just better organised, then it won't really reflect too well on Lampard. Regardless of what happens anyway, Everton are not in a good place.
That's the least I expect, though. I do expect them to be better. And I also think that not losing anybody else other than the disaffected kid who was like, didn't really want to be there, maybe that's an addition by subtraction, because all of their other players who are any good have been linked with various teams over the course of the transfer window as well. So maybe it's not the complete disaster that it looks on the face of it when they didn't sign anybody. Just on Chelsea, right? Is there anything that you think that makes any sense in what they've done, or are like next year, are Chelsea going to be the best team in world football as a result of the business they've done up to this point?
I mean, they've signed 18 players under Todd Bowley. It's a whole new squad. And some, like Graham Potter, he's got unbelievable players to work with now, but in a way you wonder, is this creating way too many headaches for him? Like, some managers like to work with a smaller pool of players, but he now has to sit down and try and work out what system suits the way he wants to play, what players suit the way he wants to play, best positions for all these players. And with all these signings, obviously, it just creates even more pressure. You draw 1-1 against Everton. Chelsea fans are going, you've got the most expensive player in in British football, sitting in midfield, he's a World Cup winner. Why aren't you beating Everton? Or I'm just using Everton for example. Just the expectation is going to just go through the roof.
Does Tom think he's playing the PlayStation?
He definitely thinks he's playing some sort of fantasy football.
It's madness, and as we said earlier, the money is monopoly money at this stage for him.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this is the January transfer window where the Premier League clubs have spent the most, and when you just see the figures of what the Premier League has spent in the rest of Europe, I said it's no surprise why the Super League was put on the table and why you kind of suspect it'll come back around soon.
It's definitely coming back. It's definitely that has not gone away. One last thing: where will Chelsea finish this season?
I don't think they're going to finish top 4. I think, like, you're obviously looking. I have the top 2 are locked in.
Can't finish top 4 at this stage.
No, I have the top 2 locked in, whether it's Arsenal or City.
Yeah.
Then I watched Newcastle last night. Now I know, look, the tie was done and dusted, but they were atrocious in the second half. You just wonder, as the season goes on, will they start dropping points? They're very hard to beat, but will they start drawing too many games? But then again, if they were to go and win a League Cup, that could give them the ultimate high, and then they finish the season out strongly. United, again, look like they're going to do it as bad as Spurs have been. And they're still there.
I came into the apartment yesterday evening to my Arsenal supporting housemate, my Arsenal obsessed housemate, and I was like, "Oh, geez, 12 million for Jorginho, you must be delighted." And he says, "Yeah." But Arsenal fans are fairly split. He says, we're so used to buying Chelsea deadwood, whether it's Petr Cech or Willian or David Luiz, players who were good, and then they picked him up at a tail end. Like, is Jorginho heading that direction, or is Jorginho actually a good... Like, if he scores 10 goals, 10 assists, whatever it might be between now and the end of the season, helps them win the league, it'll have been a good signing, but could go the other way.
But he's also coming into a much better Arsenal team.
Yeah, fair.
That's the difference. He suits the way Arsenal play. He's going to come in and he's not going to be a starter every week. But if Thomas Partey's not available, Jorginho sits there and just gets the ball rolling, conducts everything. And he's not going to score goals. He's not going to set up too many goals. But that's not what his role will be. And Arteta obviously is a big fan of him. And
take the penalties off Saka?
No.
No?
No, you can't. You got to...
Why can't you?
Because he's really excited and he's a burgeoning, blossoming talent, and you back him and you tell him, you're my number one guy. The thing about Jorginho, and I saw this only in one place, so I'm not sure if it's true, but there's only an 18-month contract, so they're not marrying him. This is like a short-term affair to get them over the hump, and they can cash in on him in the summer, get the money back if they win the league and sign Declan Rice, or if Moses Caicedo or whoever it was that they actually really wanted.
Jude Bellingham.
So it's just it's in that instance it's good business as opposed to panic buying, which we would have.
It's been a good window for Arsenal. If you think that they're obviously top of the league, they've brought in a new centre half, they've brought in a new midfielder, and they brought in a new attacker.
I think I think they're the winners of the transfer window in terms of we've strengthened our team from a position of strength. We're not the chaos and the financial fair play disaster ticking time bomb that I suspect Chelsea will end up being.
And you haven't offloaded one of your best fullbacks like Man City.
Because you had a fit of peak. We'll come back to the Cancelo thing in the months to come, as if they get one injury in that, all of a sudden, well, if only we had the guy who was like brilliant last season, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Right, we got to go. That is this week's today's Deal or No Deal.
Hi, Royce, Matty Taylor. I can see him getting his car. I've decided to go to Bolt. I'm waving him going out the car park.
Just love moving teams, and then you have to do an initiation.
They just don't seem to be able to get deals over the line.
Tomorrow we've got Daniel Harris reacting to Manchester United and Nottingham Forest. It's a done deal, but how good or bad are they in the second leg of the semi-final, where they're already through to the final, basically. Around the World with Hannon is back on Thursdays, where it finds the love and nourishment that it requires. We'll have David Myler telling us why you had to be there, and more Six Nations build-up as well. Now though, Declan Bogue was talking to Michael Verney in the hot seat last night. Enjoy.
Ordered a replay of the All-Ireland Senior Club Football final between Kilmacud Crokes and Glen after they upholded an objection to the result of the game by Glen. Of course, Kilmacud Crokes won the final on a scoreline of 1-11 to 1-9, but had 16 players on the field for the last attack after Conor Casey replaced Darren Mullen, who didn't immediately go off, and the Glen were lining up at 45 at the time. The 16th man has sparked unbelievable controversy ever since. And this is the latest chapter, and delighted to be joined by Declan Bogue of the Belfast Telegraph on the line. Declan, how are you?
Yeah, good, Michael. How are you?
I'm good. Any surprise about this latest ruling? They've ordered that a replay will be played. First and foremost, like, what's the mood up around home at the moment? What's the mood around the Glen? The mood music that you're getting from all the club up around there?
Well, essentially, the club chairman is Barry Slowey, and the vice chair is Brona Mulholland, and I do not envy I don't envy their task at all, because, you know, at the end of the day, they have to sort of take a whole club with them. Whatever decision or whatever thing that Glen decide, the course of action, they have to bring people along with them. They can't have a split in the club. And I'm sure an awful lot of their time is spent sort of politicking and trying to find out the mood among their membership of what the appetite is here, as well as balancing that with the wishes of Malachy O'Rourke and the senior team, because Malachy had said in the immediate aftermath that he wanted nothing to do with sort of an appeal that way, and just felt the club would move on. And maybe his position is softened in the meantime. I would say there is a strong feeling, and you see that in sort of broadcasts with Marty Morrissey, spent the day up in Mahara and so on. People will be pretty defiant that they want this, you know. Of course, that's, you know, you're never going to get 100% on your side that way, but that's just life. And in general, I would say that the main mood is that they're probably at this stage making a point. The realistic people would know that the chances of a replay are virtually nil, but they still want to make a point.
When you say the chances of a replay are virtually nil, is that from a Glen side or is that from a Kilmacud Crokes side? The replay has obviously been ordered. If Kilmacud Crokes do play that replay, that's not the mood or the vibe that we're hearing from up around Stillorgan. But will Glen, you know, line out to play that replay if Kilmacud Crokes play their part?
And there's so many variables about this, because as we know, Shane Walsh has gone on holiday. As we know, Emmett Bradley is getting married on February 11th. Malachy O'Rourke was said to have had travel plans. Ryan Porter, I believe, I think has had to go and have a knee operation. You know, that's the trainer of Glen. You know, there's a lot of things that are feeding into this. I think if Glen were given the replay, said, right, okay, here it is, what date is it, or Kilmacud agreed, then Glen would take it in a heartbeat. Absolutely, they would, and they'd overcome whatever they have to overcome. But I just don't see it happening for them, because I think the Kilmacud would rather send the Andy-American Cup back up in a taxi to them and want nothing to do with the replay, and that's it. It sort of dies then at that point.
If the Andy-American Cup was sent back up in a taxi, do you think that'd be a round trip? Do you think the taxi would be sent back with the Andy-American Cup in tow?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, look, you've probably read back in your history of the GA, like, you know, I mean, a century ago that things were just constantly disputed. The whole idea of, you know, one club, one life and all that was only a marketing slogan. Like, you know, people would have played for maybe 3 different clubs in 3 different counties, especially around the border counties, in one day. People just kind of turned up and played for their friends if they were at a loose end. And you know, a century ago, maybe the first half hour of any game was taken up with disputes over who was eligible to play for whatever team or club it was at the time. So, you know, these things are by and large, they're gone. Like, you know, losing a cup in the boardroom, if you want to call it that. But no, Glen wouldn't accept the cup. They certainly wouldn't. They would never live it down. I mean, could you imagine if they were drawn against Slaughtneil in the first round of the Derry Championship, and what they would have to listen to if they did that? Like, you know, it's just highly unlikely that anything will happen. My prediction, for what it is worth, is the Kilmacud lodge another objection. It just drags on, and I think at that point, then I think Glen will just say, "Do you know what? It's fine. We're dropping it. We've made our point here. They're clearly not going to play the game." And you know, I don't like this phrase, higher moral ground, but certainly, you know, they've had a point. I also sort of look at, you know, different people talking about it and saying, you know, they had chances themselves in the game to win it. While the rule, they definitely broke a rule. They definitely broke a rule. Would we even be having this conversation if the goal chances they had, if one of them had to win in? Of course not. Does that give carte blanche for other teams to do it? Look, I'm just a firm believer that it was a massive mistake on the day. Just a huge mistake, a massive mess. I don't think the GA's integrity has been really damaged in any way, because these are the procedures. People may feel that they're unwieldy. People are welcome to bring a motion through their club to Congress floor.
Just on this, Declan, how do the GA as an organisation make sure that something like this doesn't happen again?
I don't honestly think that it's one of those ones, Michael. Like, you know, you only had to look at Cillian O'Sullivan's goal for Meath at the weekend. Like, you know, watch that back and tell me how many steps he takes. Does he take 4 steps? And then decide for yourself, well, you know what? That could have been the winning and losing that game for Cork. So, you know, referees make mistakes. They make mistakes in the All-Ireland Club final, and they make mistakes in the junior C hurling level too. Like, you know, it's nothing is ever perfect in life, and unfortunately that just happened. That is one major glaring incident. Everything that goes after it is people get entrenched in their positions and throw out all sorts of ideas and then accusations. But really, look, you know, it just dies. It withers on the vine. It becomes nothing. Only just a bit of an interesting footnote in the history association, and just a little bit of, yeah, look, a tiny bit of the sheen has gone off the triumph for Kilmacud for sure.
Just on something you said earlier, how potentially divisive is this within both clubs? You know, if within the Glen club you have people who, you know, would take the cup, shall we say, if Kilmacud don't want to play the replay, then you maybe have others who don't. This is potentially divisive for their club, but I imagine it's a potentially divisive topic for Kilmacud as well, because, you know, the vast majority of them, I'm sure, will feel that they won the trophy on the field of play, albeit they broke a rule while doing that. What's the, like, I presume it is divisive within both clubs, because there's no right or wrong answer either way.
Yeah, look, clubs are, Gregory O'Kane said after the All-Ireland final, clubs are families, but there are also families that war with each other and don't get on with each other. There's always a chance that someone could be in full agreement that Glen should push as hard as they can for a replay, and someone might agree with them but will disagree with that person right there, because there's an opportunity to wind them up. I mean, that was just full of different personalities, and people get on and rub along at times and rub very much against each other at times. So, I mean, of course it's going to be divisive, but it's not going to be leading to a split or anything catastrophic like that. It's just be a difference of opinion. Some will go their way and others will go theirs, and it just becomes one of those hoary old conversational chestnuts that come up every few months.
What did you make of the Glen lads talking out for Derry at the weekend, Ethan Doherty and Conor Glass, and then obviously another sub that was on news as well? Does that is that a sense that they've moved on almost?
Well, that was, it sort of does drive a little bit of nail into the coffin a wee bit, doesn't it? And then, you know, tonight is Tuesday. Could you imagine Conor Glass was anywhere else but up in Owen Beg training now for Derry? The idea that these boys needed a break, or you know, that there was shock horror that they might play a game on Saturday, I don't really buy that, because the boys who were playing McKenna Cup played 4 games in 14 days. Glen hadn't played a game. They played 2 games in 2 weeks, you know. And before that, they hadn't played from before Christmas. So do you think that, you know, once now the players do go back into their county setups, it becomes ever more difficult then to prize them out of it? I mean, what is the CCCC will say, look, they'll set a date, they'll have to set a date, they've ordered a replay now, so they need to actually look after the logistics, appoint a referee, appoint a ground, and all that is nice in theory. And then Kilmacud will say, no, we're not doing that, and the longer it goes on, then the less appetite there's going to be all around the place.
There's a break weekend actually in the National Football League on March 11th to 12th, which is close enough to St. Patrick's Day, obviously the old traditional day. They will have to fix a date, as you said. What's the likelihood or percentage chance you feel from what you're hearing up there of this game actually, being replayed?
No, not among realistic people. And I'm not saying that I'm talking to an unbelievable number of Glen people. I'm not there's just a couple of them I know, and they're hoping against hope. But the people who would be ruthlessly realistic are just saying, look, there's just no chance. There was huge hope when it became clear that they would be offered a replay, because that was kind of, I wouldn't say it was leaked, but the people who would be in the know of these things were indicating that would be the course of action the CCCC would take. And there was flutters going with hearts and all the rest, and people being very optimistic. But nobody, I don't know if many predicted Kilmacud's stance on it. And that came as although it was well signposted in the media, it did come as a surprise when it broke. They would say absolutely not. But I honestly can't see people being too convinced that there's going to be a replay.
I suppose anything we're hearing from Kilmacud Crokes is only anecdotally as well, because we haven't actually got anybody to talk on the record about it. But if the GA had come out, we'll say, in the first 24 hours and ordered a replay, surely the chance of it being resolved in a lot more of an amicable way would have been greatly increased.
Absolutely, I agree with you, but do they really have that power? I know that people are looking at case law and they're citing, the game involving Robbie Brennan in 2005? Was that Blackwater time? Was it?
I think Dunboyne were involved as well. Yeah,
Dunboyne, yeah, in the Meath Championship and all that. But those things are governed by a county, their county's own bylaws and competition rules. And I had a wee look in the rule book, and while there is a provincial level, I'm not sure there's an actual rule governing this at All Ireland level. In some counties, if you don't do what they say or replay a game, then you could risk forfeiture of playing in the senior championship the following year. But I don't think there's actually any sort of punishment for refusing to do as instructed in this case, which makes it even harder to convince Kilmacud to do it.
Is this the case though, Declan, while people will cite, the GA doing something that will be marked as precedent in the future, and we will be investigating every little incident that happens in a game or might turn on a game, but surely, some rules are kind of there to be broken as well. If the GA, I do think there might have been an absence of leadership from the GA to come out and take the bull by the horns on this. What's your own kind of feeling on that?
I couldn't agree more. I think if Pádraig Duffy was still the Director General, he would have made a move on this. I think that it's a complete vacuum. We never ever hear from the Director General. The President is ceremonial President. He's a ribbon cutter. I think there's an appetite in the GA now for maybe a figurehead who will actually deliver some change or have some ideas or willing to take on some thorny issues. But right now we don't have it. It's catastrophically poor. Even delivering the message, when it mightn't have been official figures in Croke Park that were delivering the GA message in the past, they always had someone who is willing to do it, a national figure, or someone who is famous enough or whose name resonates among GA people. Now there's not that. There's nothing. There's just leaks to RTE, of the latest development, and that's not good enough. People actually need, the GA needs figureheads. It needs people to actually explain it. And while people might be appalled at celebrity sporting administrators like FIFA and the FAA have had in the past, but you're never going to be a celebrity GA president, but you've got to at least show some kind of leadership, or you've got to take part in the national debate, or you've got to at least outline the association's position rather than just existing in said enough. I can't do that.
Obviously, we'll have Congress next month where the next GA president will be voted in, and we'll be looking at that with bated breath. Just last one for you, Dec. Where does this rank in terms of, the greatest GA controversies or the greatest and most unfortunate GA sagas in history?
Right up there at Michael Verney not getting an All-Star.
I was never nominated, Declan.
There you are, a nomination even. No, good question. Because it is a very different one. It's a very modern one, in that, the awfully sit-in against Clare. I suppose, what else are we looking at? We're looking at, there are similarities in some ways to Joe Sheridan's inverted commas goal in 2010 against Louth. It probably sits on a par with that, and where it is among the rest of the controversies, various malaise and stuff like that. Nothing quite as harmless as getting a smack in the mouth, but nonetheless it hurts, and it will hurt for Glen.
And this just leaves a really bad taste, doesn't it, for both clubs, realistically?
Well, it does, and I mean, you can't underestimate the depth of resentment that Tyrone felt after 1995, and Paddy Russell didn't get Charlie Redmond off the pitch. Never mind that, but it was the bobble on the ball when it was touching the ground or not by Peter Campbell when he skipped up for Shawnee McLaughlin to kick what they felt was the equalising point. That burns. That absolutely burned with people for years and years. I remember actually getting John Lynch, Peter Canavan, Fergal Logan and Joe McMahon around a round table before the 2018 All-Ireland final, because each of those players had all played in all the All-Ireland finals that Tyrone had played in up to that point. And Peter had won his All-Ireland. John Lynch didn't have an All-Ireland, obviously played in the Kerry final in 86, and Fergal Logan played in the 95 and 95. And I asked Joe, did he feel less of a Tyrone county man because they didn't have the All-Ireland medal? And John Lynch is probably less better about it because that's not even a right word, but John Lynch could make peace with it because Kerry were just better than Tyrone, and that was the golden years, sort of the coda of the golden years that day. Whereas Fergal felt really still deeply sort of trying to find the right word, but he would have been upset when he thought about it. And you remember after they won the All-Ireland in 21, he spoke to us in the press conference and started reeling out or talking about all the names on his phone of all the boys he played with in 1995 that missed out on All-Ireland medal, and how he wanted to ring all of them at that point, just to say, we've got our All-Ireland medal as a panel, or as a squad, which goes to show you the depth of the feeling there.
Declan, thanks a million for joining us. Our GA club coverage on Off the Ball is in partnership with AAB, proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Check out #TheToughest for more. Declan, thanks a million.
Not at all. Michael, take care.
Talk to you soon.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.